Tonight, we'll step quietly away from the bright fires of the living world and toward a place few mortals ever truly understood. Before we begin, if you enjoy these peaceful journeys through ancient mythology, consider subscribing and returning for future stories. And now, as the evening settles around you, allow your thoughts to drift toward the mountains, the sea, and the hidden roads beneath the earth. For tonight, you travel into the kingdom of Hades, not the fiery realm imagined centuries later, not a land of endless punishment, but a vast and mysterious world where every soul eventually arrives, a world the ancient Greeks believed waited patiently beneath their feet, and somewhere in the darkness below. A silent king watches over the dead. The sea wind moves gently across the coast of Greece. You stand upon a hillside overlooking a moonlit harbor. White stone buildings rest beneath the stars. Fishing boats sway softly against wooden docks. Small waves strike harbor walls with a steady rhythm that seems older than memory itself. The scent of salt hangs in the cool air, far away. Dogs bark among distant farms. Olive trees whisper in the night breeze. Above you, countless stars fill the heavens. Yet beneath all this beauty lies another world. The ancient Greeks believed the earth concealed enormous mysteries below its surface. Beneath mountains and valleys stretched caverns, rivers, and shadowed realms untouched by sunlight. Somewhere below existed the kingdom of the dead. Children heard stories about it beside household fires. Sailors spoke of it while crossing dark seas. Farmers considered it whenever they buried loved ones beneath the soil. Death was never far away in the ancient world. Disease could arrive suddenly. Storms could sink ships without warning. Wars could sweep across entire regions. Because life felt fragile, people thought often about what waited beyond it. And so stories grew. The Greeks imagined a vast kingdom beneath the earth where every soul traveled after death. Not only kings, not only heroes, everyone. The powerful and the forgotten, the wealthy and the poor, the brave and the fearful. Every road eventually led downward. You begin walking along a narrow path that winds through the countryside. Moonlight illuminates stones beneath your feet. The night air feels cool against your skin. Nearby, a sacred grove of cypress trees rises from the darkness. Their black silhouettes stand motionless beneath the stars. Among Greeks, cypress trees often carried associations with mourning and remembrance. Their presence near graves and sanctuaries reminded visitors that life moved in cycles, and that memory endured long after death. As you pass beneath the branches, a strange feeling settles over the landscape. The world seems quieter here. Even the wind softens. Perhaps it is only imagination, or perhaps it is something else. Ancient storytellers often spoke of places where the boundary between worlds felt thinner. A lonely cave, a deep ravine, a hidden spring. Such places inspired wonder and unease. People wondered whether entrances to the underworld might exist nearby. Historians continue to debate how seriously these stories were taken by ordinary people. Some researchers believe many listeners understood them symbolically. Others suggest that sacred geography felt very real to ancient communities. Perhaps both are true. Human beings have always lived between certainty and mystery. The path continues downward. Ahead, a small shrine stands beside the road. Its stone surface glows silver beneath moonlight. An oil lamp burns before a weathered statue. The flame flickers softly. The smell of olive oil drifts through the air. Travelers often stopped at such shrines to offer prayers before dangerous journeys. For the Greeks, the world overflowed with divine presence. Gods ruled the sky. Gods ruled the sea. Gods watched forests, rivers, and mountains. And beneath them all ruled one of the most misunderstood gods in mythology, Hades. Even his name carried power. Many people preferred not to speak it casually. Some used respectful titles instead. The wealthy one, the receiver of many. The Lord below. His kingdom eventually received every mortal. No gates could remain closed forever. No fortress could resist him. No hero could defeat death permanently. Yet Hades was not usually portrayed as evil. This surprises many modern listeners. The Greeks feared death, certainly, but fear did not automatically make its ruler wicked. Hades performed a necessary role within the cosmic order. Someone had to govern the dead. Someone had to ensure that life and death remained balanced. Without such order, chaos would consume both worlds as you continue your journey. Clouds drift slowly across the moon. Shadows lengthen among rocks and trees. The road approaches the foothills of distant mountains. Legends claim that hidden caves sometimes led toward the underworld. Ancient pilgrims occasionally visited places believed to stand near entrances to the realm of the dead. Some sought wisdom, some sought answers. Some hoped to communicate with lost loved ones. Few returned with certainty. Many returned with stories. One old tradition spoke of dreams received near sacred caverns. Travelers sleeping nearby sometimes reported strange visions. They saw rivers flowing through darkness. They saw pale figures crossing silent waters. They saw a distant throne surrounded by shadows and torchlight. Most intriguingly, some described hearing a warning, not a threat, a warning. The words varied across regions and generations, yet the message remained similar. When the time comes, do not fear the road below, but do not mistake it for a road without consequences. What exactly that meant remained uncertain. Even ancient storytellers disagreed. Some believed it referred to judgment after death. Others suggested it concerned memory itself. Perhaps the soul carried its choices into eternity. Or perhaps destiny had deeper meanings hidden beyond mortal understanding. No one could know for certain. That uncertainty made the story powerful. The Greeks did not imagine themselves possessing every answer. Instead, they lived beside mysteries. The stars remained mysterious. The sea remained mysterious. Death remained mysterious. And beneath them all waited the kingdom of Hades, ahead. The mountains rise higher. Mist gathers among dark slopes. Torchlight appears far away, glowing faintly near what seems to be the mouth of a cave. The air grows colder. The scent of earth becomes stronger. You feel as though you stand at the edge of something ancient, something vast, something older than cities and kingdoms. And somewhere beyond that darkness, unseen for now, waits the silent ruler whose story is only beginning. The road beneath the earth is opening, and destiny is already moving toward him. The torchlight ahead flickers through the mountain mist. You continue climbing toward the dark opening in the rock, while the night around you grows quieter still. The sounds of distant farms and harbor walls have faded. Even the wind seems reluctant to enter this place. The cave waits in silence. Yet before you can descend toward the kingdom of Hades, you must travel much farther back in time, far beyond the age of heroes, far beyond the reign of kings, far beyond even the rule of Zeus. For the story of Hades begins before the world itself had fully taken shape. The ancient Greeks imagined a beginning unlike any ordinary beginning. There was no first sunrise, no mountains, no sea, no forests filled with birdsong, no stars scattered across the heavens. Instead, there was chaos. The word has survived into modern language, though its ancient meaning was different. Chaos was not simply disorder. It was a vast emptiness, a yawning space, a mysterious void existing before the familiar world emerged. You imagine standing at the edge of that unimaginable darkness. No sound reaches your ears. No scent drifts through the air. No warmth touches your skin. Only endless possibility. From this ancient mystery came the first beings. Among them appeared Gaia, the earth. She was not merely a goddess who lived upon the earth. She was the earth itself. Mountains would become part of her body. Valleys would rest within her. The soil beneath every future city belonged to her. Soon came Uranus, the sky. He stretched endlessly above Gaia, covering the world like a great celestial dome filled with stars not yet born. Together, they formed the first great union, earth below, sky above, the pattern that would shape all existence. You can almost see them now. Gaia resting beneath a vast canopy of darkness, Uranus arching over her like an infinite vault. The Greeks often saw meaning within such images. Nature itself became a reflection of divine relationships. The world was not separate from the gods. The world was the gods. From Gaia and Uranus came children, many children. The first generations of powerful beings who would populate the cosmos. Among them were the Titans, immense figures possessing strength beyond mortal imagination. The oceans trembled at their movements. Mountains seemed small beside their power. They would one day rule the universe, yet even during these earliest ages, signs of future conflict appeared. Ancient myths rarely allow peace to last forever. A shadow often hides within greatness. A warning often follows triumph. So it was with Uranus. Despite his power, he feared some of his own children. Certain stories claim he imprisoned them deep within Gaia. Others preserve different traditions. Historians continue to debate how these varying versions developed across regions of Greece. Yet, most accounts agree on one important truth. Fear entered the divine family very early, and fear would shape destiny again and again. Gaia suffered as her children remained trapped. Her sorrow deepened. Her anger grew. Eventually, she devised a plan. Not through armies, not through open battle, but through courage and rebellion. Among her Titan children stood Cronus, young, ambitious, determined. When Gaia asked for help, only Cronus answered. A sickle of adamant was prepared. An act of defiance approached, and with it came one of the first great prophecies of Greek mythology. The details vary between traditions, yet many storytellers believed a warning surrounded these events. The cycle beginning here would not end easily. A son would overthrow a father, then another son would do the same. Power gained through fear would eventually create more fear. Destiny had begun moving. You walk deeper into the cave. The air feels colder now. Water drips from unseen stone above. The faint scent of damp earth fills your lungs. The darkness seems ancient. Perhaps that is fitting, for the story itself grows darker. Cronus carried out Gaia's plan. The reign of Uranus ended. The Titans rose, and for a time, a new age began. Many ancient Greeks imagined this period as a kind of golden era. The world flourished. The universe seemed stable. Titan rulers governed existence, yet beneath the calm surface, old fears remained alive. Cronus had seized power, but how secure was that power? How often does a ruler who rises through rebellion truly feel safe? Perhaps rarely. The Greeks understood something timeless about human nature. Victory often fails to erase anxiety. Instead, it can deepen it. The higher a ruler climbs, the more they fear falling. Some ancient traditions tell of troubling dreams. Cronus supposedly saw images that disturbed him. A shadowed throne, a child standing where he once stood, a future slipping beyond his control. Whether these dreams belong to early myths or later interpretations remains uncertain. Another interpretation survives in scattered traditions. Yet the symbolism remains powerful. Even gods could not escape the fear of destiny. Above the cave entrance, clouds drift across the stars, far away. Thunder murmurs beyond distant mountains. You pause beside an underground pool. Its dark surface reflects the faint torchlight. For a moment, it resembles a mirror into another age. The age of Titans. The age before Olympus. The age before Hades himself existed. The Greeks loved stories of succession, one generation replacing another, old powers yielding to new ones. Perhaps they recognized this pattern in their own lives. Parents growing old, children becoming adults, cities rising and declining. Nothing remained unchanged forever. Even divine kingdoms evolved. The universe itself seemed to follow that law. Cronus ignored the warning signs, or perhaps he believed he could outsmart them. Many rulers make the same mistake. Prophecies rarely reveal exactly how they will unfold. That uncertainty tempts people to interfere, and interference often creates the very future they hope to prevent. Soon Cronus would become a father. Soon the next generation would arrive. Among those children would be Zeus. Among them would be Poseidon. And among them would be a quiet figure whose destiny pointed downward toward the unseen world. Hades, not yet king, not yet ruler of the dead, only a child waiting somewhere beyond the horizon of fate. The cave stretches deeper. The torchlight ahead grows stronger, and far above, hidden behind drifting clouds, the stars continue their silent watch over a universe already moving toward the next great chapter of its story. The prophecy has not yet spoken clearly, but its shadow is growing longer. The shadow of the prophecy lingers as you move deeper through the mountain passage. The distant torchlight casts long shapes across the stone walls. Water trickles through unseen cracks. The air carries the scent of wet earth and ancient rock. It feels as though you are walking backward through time itself, far above. The world of mortals sleeps beneath the stars. But here, beneath the mountain, you enter the age of the Titans. Cronus now rules the cosmos. The old order has fallen. Uranus no longer reigns across the heavens. The Titans stand at the center of creation. For a time, peace settles over the universe. Ancient poets often describe this era with a sense of nostalgia. Later generations imagined it as a distant golden age, a period when the world seemed larger, calmer, and somehow closer to the divine. Whether ordinary Greeks truly believed such an age existed remains uncertain. Historians continue to debate how much of this idealized vision reflected mythology and how much reflected human longing for a simpler past. Yet the image endured, and so you find yourself standing within that imagined world. The seas are calm, the mountains are young, forests spread across untouched valleys. The sky glows with a purity later ages would remember only through stories. The Titans govern every aspect of existence. Oceanus encircles the world with his mighty waters. Hyperion oversees heavenly light. Coeus, Creo, Iapetus, and others guide the growing structure of the cosmos. Among them stands Rhea, queen beside Cronus, wise and graceful, gentle yet powerful. Her presence brings balance to the Titan court. You enter a great palace imagined by ancient storytellers. Massive columns rise toward distant ceilings. Golden firelight dances across polished stone. The scent of cedar and incense drifts through vast halls. Outside, moonlight touches marble terraces overlooking endless seas. The palace feels magnificent, yet even here, beneath all this splendor, something remains unsettled. Cronus cannot entirely forget the path that brought him to power. The memory follows him. He remembers Uranus. He remembers rebellion. He remembers fear. And perhaps most troubling of all, he remembers the warning. The prophecy remains vague. No exact words survive in every tradition. Some accounts differ considerably. Yet the essential message remains remarkably consistent. One day, a child of Cronus will overthrow him. The pattern will repeat. The son who defeated a father will lose power to a son of his own. Destiny seems determined to continue its work. Ancient audiences would have recognized the irony immediately. The very act that secured Cronus's throne now threatens it. The cycle has become a prison. You walk through moonlit gardens surrounding the Titan palace. Olive trees sway gently in the night breeze. A fountain murmurs nearby. Silverfish glide beneath still water. Everything appears peaceful, yet anxiety grows in hidden places. Perhaps this is one reason Greek myths continue to feel familiar. The characters possess divine power, but their fears remain deeply human. Cronus worries about losing control. He worries about the future. He worries about forces he cannot fully understand. Many rulers throughout history have felt the same. The stronger they become, the more fragile their security appears. The Greeks understood this paradox well. Power rarely eliminates fear. Often it feeds it. Years pass. The world flourishes. Then a divine sign appears. One evening, according to certain traditions, unusual stars cross the heavens. Elsewhere, storytellers describe strange dreams visiting the Titan king. Another interpretation suggests that priests and poets later added such omens to emphasize destiny's approach. No one can know with certainty. Yet myths often use signs to reveal truths hidden beneath ordinary events. And the truth here is simple. The next generation is coming. Soon Rhea becomes pregnant. The palace fills with anticipation. Servants prepare celebrations. Sacred fires burn through the night. Songs echo across courtyards beneath the stars. A child is about to be born, but while others celebrate, Cronus grows silent. The prophecy returns to his thoughts. The warning refuses to disappear. You stand beside a balcony overlooking dark hills beyond the palace, far away. Thunder flickers beyond distant clouds. The storm never arrives. It remains on the horizon, waiting, much like fate itself. The first child is born. Hestia, a goddess destined to embody the sacred hearth. Warmth, home, family, qualities cherished throughout Greek society. Yet joy lasts only briefly. Cronus remembers the prophecy. Fear overwhelms reason, and so he commits an act that horrifies even later gods. He swallows the child, not kills, not banishes, swallows. The image feels strange and unsettling. Ancient listeners likely found it disturbing as well. Yet symbolism often mattered more than literal interpretation. By swallowing his children, Cronus attempts complete control. He refuses to allow the future any freedom. Nothing will escape him. Nothing will threaten him. Or so he believes. More children follow. Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, each time. The same terrible pattern repeats, each time. Fear triumphs over love, each time. Destiny seems pushed farther away, yet only seems, for prophecies rarely disappear. They wait. You pause beside a sacred fire burning within the palace. Its flames crackle softly. The warmth reaches your face. The scent of olive wood rises into the air. Nearby stands Rhea. Her sorrow deepens with every child taken from her. Ancient myths sometimes portray her grief quietly. Other traditions emphasize her growing determination. Either way, a transformation begins. No mother can endure such loss forever. No warning can remain unanswered indefinitely. Meanwhile, among the swallowed children rests one who will someday rule the dead. Hades, strangely. Myths tell us little about his earliest years. Unlike Zeus, he receives few childhood adventures. Unlike Apollo or Hermes, he enjoys few playful stories. He remains hidden, silent, almost forgotten. Perhaps that is fitting, even before becoming lord of the underworld. Hades exists in shadow, waiting, patient, unseen, and still the prophecy advances. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, another child approaches. The youngest, the one fate has chosen. The Greeks often viewed destiny as both mysterious and inevitable. Mortals might resist it. Gods might fear it. Kings might attempt to prevent it. Yet destiny continued moving forward, like a river flowing toward the sea. No wall could stop it forever. No throne could command it. As night settles over the Titan kingdom, Rhea gazes toward the stars. An idea begins forming. A plan, a possibility, far away. Hidden caves await. Secret allies wait. And soon a child will be born who escapes Cronus's grasp. The golden age of the Titans appears strong. The palace still shines. The kingdom still prospers. The ruler still sits upon his throne. But beneath the calm surface, change is already gathering. The storm remains distant, yet it is coming. And when it arrives, it will transform the universe forever. The storm remains beyond the horizon, yet every passing season brings it closer. As you leave the shining halls of the Titans behind, the world feels quieter once more. The palace fires fade into memory. The music of celebration has ended. Only the sound of wind remains, moving through lonely hills beneath a canopy of stars. The age of Cronus still endures, but cracks are beginning to appear. You walk along a narrow mountain path beneath moonlight. Below, dark valleys stretch toward distant seas. Above, constellations shine with a cold and ancient beauty. The Greeks often looked to the heavens for meaning. Stars seemed permanent. Human lives did not. Perhaps that is why stories of fate carried such power. The sky appeared orderly. Life rarely felt that way. Far below, waves strike hidden cliffs. The scent of salt drifts inland. And somewhere in the vast Titan kingdom, Rhea prepares for one final gamble. Her grief has become determination. 5 children have vanished into Cronus. 5 children remain trapped within the body of their fearful father. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. Each loss has deepened the wound, yet each loss has also strengthened her resolve. Ancient storytellers often portray Rhea as calm in the face of overwhelming sorrow. Unlike warriors who fight with swords or kings who command armies, her strength emerges through patience and wisdom. Now those qualities will change history. Another child is coming, and this time she refuses to surrender. The night of the birth approaches. Sacred fires burn within hidden shrines. Priests offer prayers. Nymphs whisper among forest springs. A sense of anticipation spreads through the divine world. Perhaps only a few truly understand its significance. Or perhaps destiny itself is holding its breath. Some ancient traditions speak of unusual signs appearing before the child is born. A bright star lingering above a mountain. An eagle circling where none had flown before. Dreams sent to wandering shepherds. Historians continue to debate the origins of such stories. Yet throughout mythology, divine signs often appear when great transformations approach. The universe seems eager to announce important moments. Even when no one fully understands them, you arrive at a hidden valley surrounded by steep cliffs. Moonlight spills across silver streams. Wildflowers sway in the cool night air. The scent of pine drifts from nearby forests. It feels untouched by conflict, a place where secrets might safely hide. This is the kind of place Greek storytellers loved. Remote, beautiful, protected by nature itself. Far from the reach of kings, far from the eyes of fate, or so people hope. But fate has a way of finding every hidden path. The child is born. Zeus, the youngest son of Cronus and Rhea, the future king of the gods. Yet none of those titles matter now. He is only an infant, small, vulnerable, dependent upon others for survival. The Greeks often emphasize this contrast. Greatness rarely begins in power. It begins in weakness. Heroes are born as children. Kings begin as infants. Even gods must start somewhere. Rhea acts quickly. She wraps a stone in swaddling cloth. Then she presents it to Cronus. Fear blinds him. Without suspicion, he swallows the stone. The deception succeeds. For the first time, one of his children escapes. The prophecy remains alive, hidden, breathing, growing stronger with every passing day. You can almost feel destiny shifting, not dramatically, not yet, more like the first movement of distant thunder. A small change, but an irreversible one. Zeus is carried away from the Titan court. Different traditions place his upbringing in different locations. Some stories point toward Crete, others preserve alternative sacred sites. Archaeological discoveries reveal that several regions claimed connections to the childhood of Zeus. Local traditions often adapted myths to their own landscapes. Such variations remind us how alive these stories remained. They changed. They traveled. They belong to many communities. In one enduring version, Zeus grows within a hidden cave. You enter that cave now. The air feels cool. Water trickles down stone walls. Torchlight flickers against ancient rock. Outside, waves crash against distant shores. Inside, silence reigns, except for the sound of a child sleeping. Nymphs care for him. According to some traditions, a divine goat named Amalthea provides nourishment. Other versions tell slightly different stories. Yet all agree upon one point. The child survives, and survival changes everything. Nearby stand the Curites, warrior guardians. Whenever the infant cries, they clash shields and spears together. The noise prevents Cronus from hearing him. The image remained popular among ancient storytellers. Bronze striking bronze, echoes filling mountain caverns, protectors preserving hope. The Greeks may have seen something symbolic here. Sometimes the future survives because ordinary acts of loyalty protect it, not through grand miracles, not through overwhelming force, through devotion, through courage, through persistence. Years begin to pass. Zeus grows. The hidden child becomes a young god, strong, intelligent, patient. Unlike his father, he learns caution. Unlike his father, he understands that power alone cannot guarantee security. Yet questions remain. How much did he know about the prophecy? When did he learn about his imprisoned siblings? Ancient traditions offer different answers. Some suggest he knew early. Others imply the truth emerged gradually. No surviving source can provide complete certainty. The mystery remains. Perhaps that uncertainty makes the story more human. Knowledge rarely arrives all at once. It emerges piece by piece, much like destiny itself. Meanwhile, deep within Cronus rests the forgotten generation. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Poseidon, and Hades. The future ruler of the dead remains trapped in darkness, waiting, silent, unseen, as he will so often be throughout mythology. The earlier warning continues to echo. A child will overthrow the father. The promise has not vanished. It has merely grown older, stronger, closer. You step toward the mouth of the cave, outside. Dawn approaches. The eastern horizon glows faintly with silver light. Sea mist drifts across distant hills. Birds begin their first songs. The world appears peaceful, yet beneath that peace, immense forces are gathering. Zeus is no longer helpless. Cronus remains unaware. The Titans still believe their rule secure. But the balance has changed. A hidden child now walks beneath the same stars as his father. The prophecy breathes, the warning endures, and somewhere beyond the coming sunrise, the first steps toward a war that will shake heaven, earth, and the future kingdom of Hades have already begun. The first light of dawn spreads across the sea. You stand outside the hidden cave and watch pale gold appear along the horizon. The waves below catch the growing light. Seabirds glide above the cliffs. For a brief moment, the world seems perfectly calm, yet calmness can be deceptive. Beneath the beauty of the morning, forces are moving that will soon transform the cosmos. The hidden child has grown. The prophecy advances, and the age of the Titans is approaching its end. You begin walking along a coastal path where wild thyme grows between stones. The scent rises gently into the cool air. Far offshore, fishing boats drift across quiet waters. The ordinary world continues, but beyond ordinary sight. Divine preparations are unwound away. Zeus has reached maturity. The infant concealed from Cronus is now a powerful young god. Ancient storytellers often describe him as confident, clever, and determined, unlike many heroes who rush toward danger. Zeus understands that patience can be a weapon. He cannot simply challenge Cronus immediately. The Titan King remains enormously powerful. His allies still dominate the universe. Victory will require planning. It will require courage. And above all, it will require help. The Greeks admired intelligence as much as strength. Again and again, myths celebrate those who combine power with wisdom. Zeus would need both. Different traditions preserve different details about the next events. Some accounts tell of a divine potion. Others emphasize strategic deception. Yet most versions agree upon the outcome. The imprisoned children must be freed. Only then can the prophecy continue. You enter a grand hall imagined by generations of storytellers. Bronze torches burn along towering walls. Their flames dance across polished stone. The scent of cedar smoke drifts through the chamber. At its center sits Cronus, king of the Titans, ruler of the universe, still convinced that he has defeated destiny. Yet destiny often approaches quietly, without warning, without spectacle. A cup is presented, a plan unfolds, and soon the impossible begins, one by one. The swallowed children emerge. Hestia returns, Demeter returns, Hera returns, Poseidon returns, and finally, Hades emerges from the darkness that has enclosed him for ages. The moment feels almost dreamlike. Ancient poets seldom dwell upon the details, perhaps because some events carry more symbolic power than literal explanation. The old generation of imprisoned gods is reborn. A lost future suddenly returns. The balance of power shifts. The prophecy takes another step forward. You pause beside a sacred fire. Its warmth touches your face. The crackling wood sends sparks upward into the darkness. Nearby stand the reunited siblings for the first time. They face one another as free beings, the future rulers of sky. Sea and Underworld stand together. Yet many questions remain. What thoughts filled Hades at this moment? How did it feel to emerge into freedom after endless confinement? The myths rarely say. Hades often remains mysterious, even within stories focused on his own family. Some researchers believe this reflects his later role as ruler of the unseen realm. Others suggest that ancient storytellers simply found mystery appropriate for a god connected with death. Whatever the reason, silence often surrounds him, and that silence gives him unusual depth. The conflict can no longer be avoided. The younger gods gather allies. The Titans prepare for war. The universe divides into opposing sides. The Greeks called this struggle the Titanomachy, the War of the Titans, a battle so vast that later generations imagined it shaking all creation. You climb a mountain ridge and look across a mythic landscape transformed by war. Thunder rolls across dark skies. Clouds gather above towering peaks. The sea churns beneath fierce winds. Lightning flashes among distant mountains. The world itself seems caught between old and new ages. The imagery is grand, yet beneath the spectacle lies a familiar theme. Every generation eventually faces the question of change. Will the old order remain, or will something new emerge? The Greeks expressed this universal tension through divine conflict. The Titans represent established power. The Olympians represent transformation. Neither side yields easily. The war continues year after year. Ancient traditions often describe 10 years of struggle. Victory remains uncertain. Neither side possesses enough strength to secure complete triumph. A strange balance emerges. And with balance comes another warning. Several traditions preserve stories of prophecies delivered during the conflict. The details differ, yet the message remains consistent. Zeus cannot win alone. Hidden powers beneath the earth must be released. Only then can the war reach its destined conclusion. You descend towards shadowed caverns deep below the mountains. The air grows colder. Mist drifts through enormous underground chambers. Torchlight flickers against walls that seem carved by time itself. Here dwell ancient beings imprisoned long before the rise of Kronos. The Cyclopes, the 100-handed ones, creatures feared even by gods. Some stories portray them as monstrous. Others emphasize their loyalty once freed. As often happens in mythology, different traditions survive side by side. What matters is their role in destiny. Zeus chooses liberation over fear. The prisoners are released, and gratitude follows. The Cyclopes forge extraordinary gifts for Zeus. The thunderbolt for Poseidon. The trident for Hades, a remarkable object that receives less attention than the others. A helmet of invisibility, a gift perfectly suited to its future owner. The symbolism is striking. Zeus receives power visible across the heavens. Poseidon receives authority over the sea. Hades receives mastery of concealment. Already the future realms begin taking shape. Already the personalities of the brothers appear reflected in their gifts. The war enters its final stage. Thunderbolts shatter mountains. The earth trembles. The sea roars against shattered shores. Ancient listeners must have imagined these scenes with awe. Volcanoes, earthquakes, storms. The natural world itself provided inspiration. The Greeks saw divine struggles reflected in the forces surrounding them. Then comes the decisive moment. The Olympians prevail. The Titans fall. Some are imprisoned. Others fade from power. A new age begins, yet even amid victory, mystery remains. Ancient traditions preserve different accounts of what became of certain titans. Scholars continue debating how these stories evolved. Not every question receives an answer. Perhaps mythology was never meant to answer everything. Some mysteries endure. As the storm clouds finally begin to clear, the victorious gods stand upon a transformed world. The prophecy has been fulfilled. The father has fallen. The children have risen. But another decision still awaits. The universe must be divided. The seas require a ruler. The heavens require a ruler. And somewhere below, hidden beneath mountains and rivers, a vast unseen kingdom waits for its king. Hades has won the war. Yet his greatest destiny lies ahead, far beneath the earth, far beyond sunlight, in a realm no living mortal can avoid forever. The great war has ended. The thunder that once shook the heavens now fades into memory. Across the world, clouds slowly part. Sunlight returns to mountain peaks. Rivers flow peacefully once more. The sea settles beneath a sky no longer torn by battle. For the first time in many years, silence returns. You stand upon a high cliff overlooking the world that has survived the Titanomachy. The air feels fresh after the storm. Below, white waves roll toward distant shores. Far inland, forests spread across valleys washed clean by rain. The universe seems to pause, a breath between ages. The old order has fallen. The new one has not yet fully begun. Such moments often carry a special kind of power. Ancient Greeks understood that endings and beginnings frequently overlap. One age does not vanish instantly. Another does not arrive complete. Instead, change unfolds gradually. And now the victorious gods face an important question. Who will rule what remains? The Olympians have secured victory together, yet the cosmos is vast. No single ruler can govern every corner equally. The heavens stretch endlessly above. The seas cover enormous distances, and beneath everything lies a hidden realm few have ever seen. The brothers must decide. You walk toward a broad meadow surrounded by distant mountains. Wild flowers sway gently in the breeze. The scent of thyme and olive blossoms drifts through the warm air. In mythology, Important decisions often occur in places where nature itself seems to listen. The three brothers gather. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, each has emerged from extraordinary circumstances. Each has helped shape the outcome of the war. Each now stands at the threshold of destiny. Ancient traditions generally agree about what happens next. Lots are cast. Chance, or perhaps fate, determines the division. Yet even here, some uncertainty survives. Historians continue to debate whether the casting of lots reflected religious beliefs about divine order, or whether it symbolized a deeper cultural respect for impartial judgment. Perhaps both ideas played a role. The Greeks often found meaning in events that appeared random. Chance itself could reveal destiny. The lots are drawn. Zeus receives the sky. Poseidon receives the sea. Hades receives the underworld. The earth itself remains shared among them. The arrangement seems simple, yet its consequences will echo through every future story. You look upward. The sky stretches endlessly overhead. It is easy to understand why Zeus becomes associated with kingship and authority. Everyone can see the sky. Everyone experiences storms. Lightning commands attention. Thunder demands respect. His realm occupies the most visible part of creation. Poseidon's domain also possesses dramatic power. The sea surrounds Greece. It provides trade, food, travel, opportunity, danger. Sailors pray to Poseidon because they must. His moods can determine life or death. Yet Hades receives something entirely different. Something hidden, something mysterious, something most beings would rather avoid. The kingdom of the dead. At first glance, this may seem unfair. Some later storytellers even imagined Hades resenting his lot. Yet surviving myths rarely emphasize jealousy. In fact, Hades often appears surprisingly accepting of his role. The Greeks did not generally portray him as a god obsessed with overthrowing Zeus, unlike many rulers in mythology. He rarely seeks greater power. He governs what has been entrusted to him, quietly, steadily, without rebellion. This detail is easy to overlook, yet it reveals something important about his character. You continue your journey toward the edge of a mountain ridge. Mist drifts upward from unseen valleys below. The scent of pine fills the air. A hawk circles overhead, far away. Thunder rumbles faintly across distant horizons. Not as a threat, merely a reminder. Zeus now rules the heavens. Ancient audiences likely recognized symbolic meaning in the division of realms. The sky represented authority. The sea represented uncertainty and change. The underworld represented inevitability. No mortal could permanently avoid any of these forces. Everyone lived beneath the sky. Many depended upon the sea. And eventually, everyone faced death together. The three brothers governed the conditions of existence itself. Yet Hades' kingdom remained unique. Unlike Zeus, he would rarely receive prayers for daily needs. Unlike Poseidon, he would seldom appear in tales of adventure. Most people preferred not to attract his attention. Respect existed, but affection remained limited. This distinction mattered. Fear and reverence often accompanied his name. Not because he was evil, because he represented a reality no one could escape as you descend into a narrow valley. Evening begins approaching. Golden sunlight spills across distant hills. Long shadows stretch between ancient trees. The world feels peaceful, yet beneath your feet lies another world entirely. A world Hades must now shape into a functioning kingdom. What exactly existed there already? The myths do not always agree. Some traditions suggest the underworld predated its ruler. Others imply that Hades organized and structured an earlier realm of shadows. Ancient storytellers preserved multiple possibilities. The uncertainty remains part of the mystery, and perhaps mystery suits this place. The underworld was never meant to be fully understood, only imagined. You arrive beside a spring bubbling from the earth. Cold water flows across smooth stones. The sound is soothing. Nearby stands an old cypress tree. Its dark branches reach toward the evening sky. The tree reminds you of the grove from the beginning of your journey. A quiet callback. A reminder that every path eventually circles back toward death and memory. The Greeks often planted cypress trees near graves. Their evergreen nature suggested endurance, memory surviving beyond mortality. Perhaps Hades himself embodied something similar. Not destruction, continuation. The keeper of what remains after life ends. the ruler of memory's final destination. As twilight deepens, another sign appears. A flock of black birds crosses the darkening sky. They move toward distant mountains where the sun has already disappeared. An ordinary sight, yet ancient observers often interpreted such moments symbolically. Birds traveling westward, toward darkness, toward the unseen, an omen. Perhaps, or perhaps simply nature following its course. The Greeks frequently left room for both interpretations. That uncertainty gave their myths lasting depth. The gods have chosen their realms. The heavens belong to Zeus. The seas belong to Poseidon. And now Hades must descend below. His true story is about to begin. Not as a warrior, not as a rebel, not as a conqueror, but as a king whose kingdom stretches beneath every mountain, every city, every field, and every shore. A kingdom waiting patiently beneath the world of the living. A kingdom few understand, and one you are about to enter. The entrance appears at twilight. You follow a winding trail through mountains where evening mist gathers among the rocks. The last light of the sun fades behind distant ridges. Shadows lengthen across the landscape. The air grows colder with each step. Ahead, a cavern opens within the mountainside. Its mouth is vast, dark, silent. No torch burns at the entrance. No bird's nest nearby. Even the wind seems reluctant to enter. Ancient Greeks imagined many possible entrances to the underworld. Some were associated with caves, others with lakes, deep chasms, or remote sanctuaries. Different regions preserved different traditions, yet all shared one feeling, a sense of crossing a threshold, a place where the familiar world begins to fade. You pause at the entrance. The scent of damp stone rises from the darkness. Water echoes somewhere below. The sounds feel distant, muted, as though the cave itself absorbs them. And beyond that darkness waits the new ruler of the dead. Hades, not a monster, not a devil, not an enemy of the gods. Simply a king whose kingdom no one wishes to visit. The distinction mattered greatly to the ancient Greeks. Modern imagination often casts rulers of the dead as embodiments of evil. Yet, surviving Greek traditions rarely portray Hades in such simple terms. He is stern, unyielding, serious, but usually just. Death itself feels harsh. Its ruler does not need to be cruel. You begin descending. The passage twists deeper into the earth. Torchlight appears at intervals along the stone walls. The flames burn steadily despite the still air. Their golden glow reflects across black rock polished by countless ages. The deeper you travel, the more distant the living world becomes. The scent of olive groves vanishes. The sea wind disappears. Birdsong is gone. Only silence remains. And silence suits Hades. Among the Olympians, he is perhaps the most reserved. Zeus commands storms. Poseidon stirs oceans. Apollo inspires music and prophecy. Hermes races between worlds. But Hades rarely seeks attention. He governs. He watches. He endures. Many scholars find this aspect of his character fascinating, unlike other gods. Hades appears in relatively few myths. He does not frequently interfere in mortal affairs. He does not wander the earth pursuing glory. Instead, he remains where destiny placed him. There is a certain melancholy in that image, a ruler surrounded by countless souls, yet profoundly alone. The passage widens into an immense cavern. Torchlight stretches across colossal columns of stone. An underground river flows through the darkness. Its surface reflects flickering gold and black. Mist drifts above the water. The air feels cool against your skin. The Greeks imagined the underworld not as a place of fire, but often as a place of shadows, a realm beneath sunlight, a kingdom of memory, a land where time itself feels different. You continue forward, far ahead. A great hall emerges from the darkness. Its architecture resembles neither mortal cities nor Olympus. The structure feels older, heavier, built for eternity. Massive black pillars support distant ceilings lost in shadow. Bronze braziers burn with steady flames. The scent of incense lingers faintly in the air. And there sits Hades, upon a dark throne, still, silent, watching. The image is striking, yet not terrifying. Ancient artists often depicted him with dignity rather than savagery. A mature ruler, bearded, composed, possessing authority that requires no display. He does not need thunderbolts. He does not need dramatic gestures. Everyone eventually enters his kingdom. Power that cannot be escaped rarely needs advertisement. You study the king, and perhaps for the first time, a question emerges. Was Hades lonely? The myths never answer directly, yet they leave clues. His kingdom lies separated from Olympus. The gods feast together above. They celebrate festivals, attend councils, watch the affairs of mortals. Hades remains below, a necessary ruler, yet a distant one. Ancient listeners may have sensed this isolation. Perhaps they understood that certain responsibilities create separation. Kings often stand apart from ordinary people. Judges carry burdens others cannot, and no burden is greater than governing the dead. The river nearby continues flowing. Its sound echoes softly through the hall, like distant rain, like forgotten memories. The Greeks believed that every soul eventually arrived here. Heroes, farmers, sailors, queens, children. No mortal achievement could alter that final journey. This gave the underworld extraordinary significance. It was not a remote corner of mythology. It was everyone's future, and therefore its ruler mattered deeply. A flicker of torchlight catches your eye. Along the walls stand countless figures, not prisoners, not suffering spirits, simply souls, waiting, walking, existing. Ancient descriptions vary considerably. Some portray the dead as shadowy reflections of their former selves. Others suggest more vivid forms of existence. Historians continue debating how these beliefs evolved over centuries. The underworld was never a single, fixed concept. It changed alongside Greek culture itself. Yet one theme remained constant. The dead endured. Death was not annihilation. Something continued. Exactly what remained uncertain, but something remained. This belief shaped countless rituals throughout Greece. Funeral offerings, prayers, memorial ceremonies, acts of remembrance. The living maintained relationships with the dead because they believed the dead still existed somewhere, and that somewhere belonged to Hades. You move deeper into the throne hall. The floor beneath your feet feels smooth and cold. The air remains perfectly still. Nearby burns a sacred fire unlike any earthly flame. Its light glows blue at the edges. The sight feels dreamlike, a divine sign. Perhaps, or perhaps merely another mystery of this strange kingdom. The Greeks often left such questions unanswered. Not every wonder required explanation. Not every mystery demanded certainty. Sometimes mystery itself carried meaning. Hades rises from his throne, not dramatically. Simply, the movement feels deliberate, measured. Ancient kings often demonstrated authority through restraint rather than spectacle. The ruler of the dead embodies that principle perfectly. You realize something important. Hades does not rule through fear alone. He rules through permanence. Storms pass, wars end, empires crumble, even gods experience change. But death remains, and therefore his kingdom remains. The thought feels neither comforting nor frightening, only true, far above. Night settles across Greece. Families gather around fires. Sailors anchor their ships. Children listen to stories beneath starlit skies. Life continues. Yet beneath every village and mountain, beneath every temple and harbor, the kingdom of Hades waits quietly, patient, enduring, unseen. And its lonely king watches over it all. Soon, you will journey farther into his realm, toward rivers, ferrymen, judges, and mysteries older than memory. But for now, the silent ruler remains before you, a god often feared, rarely understood, and perhaps more solitary than any other being in the cosmos. The lonely king fades once more into shadow. As you leave the great hall of Hades, the sound of the underground river grows louder. The echoes follow you through vast corridors carved from black stone. Torchlight flickers against cavern walls. Mist drifts through the darkness like pale breath. The kingdom beneath the earth stretches farther than you imagined. Much farther. The ancient Greeks did not envision the underworld as a single chamber or simple destination. It was an entire realm, a vast landscape, a hidden world, a place with rivers, roads, boundaries, and distant regions, like the world of the living, yet profoundly different. You continue walking along a stone pathway that follows the river's edge. The air feels cool and still. The scent of wet earth surrounds you. Far overhead, the cavern ceiling disappears into darkness. No stars shine here, no moon rises, only torchlight and shadow. Ahead, the river widens. Its waters move slowly, almost silently. Ancient Greeks believed that several sacred rivers flowed through the underworld. Each possessed its own nature and meaning. Each reflected something about death itself, and together they formed the geography of eternity. The first river you encounter is Styx. Its name survived for thousands of years, even today. It remains one of the most famous features of Greek mythology. The water appears dark as polished obsidian. Its surface reflects almost no light. A strange stillness hangs above it. The Greeks regarded Styx with extraordinary respect. Even the gods feared breaking oaths sworn upon its waters. This detail reveals something fascinating. The river was not merely part of the underworld. It represented cosmic truth. Promises made upon Styx carried immense weight. If a god broke such an oath, consequences followed. The exact punishments vary between traditions. Yet all agree that Styx embodied something sacred, something binding, something older than convenience or desire. You kneel beside the water. The surface remains perfectly calm, yet no reflection appears, only darkness. Perhaps this is why the river inspired such awe. It seems less like water and more like a boundary, a line separating worlds, a reminder that some thresholds cannot easily be crossed. The pathway continues. Mist thickens around your feet. Torchlight becomes softer. Ahead, another river emerges from the darkness. This is Acheron, the river of woe. Its waters move steadily through the underworld, not violently, not angrily, simply onward, like time itself. The Greeks often associated Acheron with sorrow, not despair, not torment, sorrow, the quiet grief that follows loss, the sadness that remains after farewells, the emotion every human experiences sooner or later. Perhaps that is why the river feels strangely familiar. Its meaning reaches beyond mythology, across countless generations. People have stood beside graves, watched funeral fires, or whispered final goodbyes. The Greeks gave that universal experience a river flowing forever through the land of the dead. The sound of moving water accompanies you as you walk onward. The air grows colder. A distant glow appears through the mist. Not bright, merely enough to reveal another current winding through shadow. This is Cocytus, the river of lamentation. Ancient storytellers often described it with haunting imagery, whispers drifting across dark waters, echoes lingering among cavern walls, voices carried through the gloom. Whether these descriptions were meant literally remains uncertain. Another interpretation suggests they symbolized memory, regret, longing, the emotions that accompany remembrance. Historians continue debating such meanings, yet uncertainty often enriches mythology. The unanswered question becomes part of the story. You pause and listen. The river murmurs softly. The sound resembles distant voices, or perhaps merely flowing water. The distinction is impossible to determine, and perhaps that is precisely the point. Further ahead, the landscape changes dramatically. A reddish glow appears against the cavern walls. The air grows warmer. The scent of minerals fills the darkness. Before you flows Phlegethon, the river of fire, unlike later visions of fiery underworlds. Phlegethon occupies only one part of the Greek realm of the dead. Its burning waters illuminate the surrounding caverns. Golden reflections dance across black stone. Steam rises from the current. The sight is beautiful and slightly unsettling. The Greeks often used fire as a symbol of transformation, something passing from one state into another, life becoming death, mortality becoming memory. The flames of Phlegethon seem to embody that transition. Not endless destruction, change, the constant movement between conditions. You stand beside the fiery river for several moments. Its warmth contrasts sharply with the cold air elsewhere in the underworld, a reminder that even here, opposites coexist, darkness and light, silence and sound, stillness and movement. The kingdom of Hades contains all of them, yet one river remains, perhaps the most mysterious of all. The pathway narrows, the mist returns, the glow of fire disappears behind you. Eventually you arrive at waters unlike any you have yet seen. Clear, calm, almost inviting. This is Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, among all the rivers of the underworld. Lethe may reveal the deepest Greek concern about death. Not pain, not punishment, forgetfulness, to be forgotten, to lose memory, to fade from remembrance. Ancient audiences understood that memory granted a kind of immortality. Heroes sought glory partly because they wished their names to survive. Families honored ancestors through remembrance. Poets preserved stories across generations. Memory mattered deeply, and here flowed a river capable of washing memory away. Some traditions claimed souls drank from Lethe before entering new states of existence. Others preserved different interpretations. Surviving evidence indicates that beliefs varied considerably across regions and centuries. Yet the symbolism remains powerful. Who are you without memory? The question lingers, unanswered. You gaze into the clear water. For a moment, you think you see faces beneath the surface. Then they vanish. Perhaps a trick of light. Perhaps something else. The mystery remains, and mystery belongs naturally to the underworld. Far away, a deep sound echoes through the caverns. A horn, or perhaps a distant call. The meaning is unclear, yet it serves as a reminder. These rivers are not isolated wonders. They form part of a greater kingdom. A kingdom governed by laws, by journeys, by destinations. And every soul arriving here must eventually travel these waters. The earlier warning from the dreamers near the sacred cave returns to your thoughts. Do not fear the road below, but do not mistake it for a road without consequences. The rivers reveal why. Every crossing changes something. Every boundary carries meaning. Every journey leaves part of the traveler behind. The mist begins to drift once more across the pathways. Torchlight flickers in the distance, and somewhere beyond the rivers waits another figure. Ancient, silent, patient. The ferryman whose task has endured for countless ages. The keeper of the crossing, Charon. And soon, your journey will carry you toward his shore. The mist thickens as you leave the rivers behind. It drifts slowly across the pathways of the underworld, softening every edge and blurring every distance. The glow of torches appears and disappears through the gray veil. The air feels cool against your skin. Only the sound of water remains constant, a steady rhythm, ancient, endless. You follow that sound deeper into the kingdom of Hades. The pathway gradually descends. The stone beneath your feet grows smoother, worn by countless travelers. Somewhere ahead, a faint light glimmers through the mist. Not the warm light of a hearth, not the golden light of sunrise, a colder glow. A light that seems to belong entirely to this hidden realm. The Greeks believed that every soul eventually arrived at a crossing place, a shoreline, unlike any found in the world above. A boundary between arrival and passage, a place where the dead paused before continuing their journey. And waiting there stood a solitary figure, Charon, the ferryman of the dead. You emerge from the mist onto a vast shore. Dark water stretches into the distance. Its surface reflects scattered torchlight like fragments of broken stars. No waves disturb it. No wind touches it. The stillness feels profound, almost sacred. Along the shoreline stand countless souls. Some wait patiently. Others stare silently across the water. Their forms appear pale in the dim light, neither fully alive nor entirely gone, simply waiting. The image endured for centuries because it captured something universal. The uncertainty that often accompanies transitions, the moment between one state and another. The Greeks understood that crossings possess power. Birth is a crossing. Adulthood is a crossing. Marriage is a crossing. Death is the final crossing of all. And every crossing requires a guide. A boat emerges from the darkness. Its shape gradually becomes clear, long, narrow, weathered by unimaginable ages. The wood appears ancient beyond measure. Its surface bears the marks of countless journeys. The vessel glides across the water without sound. No oars splash, no waves form behind it. It simply moves, steady, certain, inevitable. At the stern stands Charon. His appearance varies across surviving traditions. Some artists portrayed him as stern and aged. Others emphasized his rough and weathered nature. A few traditions gave him almost frightening qualities. Yet one feature remains consistent. He is ancient, older than memory, older than many kingdoms. A figure shaped by endless repetition. You watch him guide the boat toward the shore. The torchlight reveals a face marked by countless journeys. Not cruel, not compassionate, simply accustomed to his task. Ancient storytellers rarely portrayed Charon as malicious. His role resembles that of a gatekeeper, a guide, a necessary part of the journey. The Greeks often understood death through such practical imagery. Someone must carry souls across. Someone must maintain the passage. Someone must ensure the order of the underworld continues. Charon fulfills that purpose. The boat reaches the shore. The waiting souls begin to gather. And here another important belief appears. Throughout much of ancient Greece, families often placed coins with the dead, sometimes beneath the tongue, sometimes upon the eyes. The custom varied, yet the meaning remained similar. The coin served as payment for the ferryman, a final act of preparation, a final gift from the living. Archaeological discoveries have uncovered graves containing such offerings across various regions of the Greek world. The practice reveals how deeply these stories influenced everyday life. The journey to the underworld was not merely mythology. For many people, it felt like a real concern, a real destination, a real crossing. You walk beside the shoreline. The water remains perfectly calm. Nearby stands a soul clutching a small coin. The figure gazes toward the approaching boat, waiting. Ancient audiences likely recognized themselves in such scenes. Not heroes, not kings, ordinary people. Everyone eventually joined the queue. Everyone eventually faced the crossing. This universal quality gave the myth remarkable power. Death did not discriminate. The ferryman carried all alike. A distant sound echoes across the water. Perhaps a horn, perhaps merely the river itself. The uncertainty feels appropriate. The underworld rarely offers complete clarity. The earlier mystery of Lethe returns briefly to your thoughts. Memory, forgetfulness, identity. The questions remain unresolved, and now another question emerges. What happens to those who cannot cross? Certain traditions tell of souls left wandering the shore, unburied, unprepared, unable to complete their journey. Ancient Greeks placed great importance on proper funeral rites, partly because of such beliefs. Burial was not merely a social custom. It carried spiritual significance. The dead deserved passage. The dead deserved dignity. Without these rites, uncertainty lingered. Some researchers believe such stories reinforced communal responsibilities toward the deceased. Another interpretation suggests they expressed deeper anxieties about remembrance and belonging. Both explanations may contain truth. Human beings have always feared abandonment, even after death. The boat begins another journey. Charon guides it across the dark water. The souls remain silent. The ferryman remains silent. Only the river speaks. The image feels strangely peaceful. Not joyful, not sorrowful, simply calm, like twilight settling over the sea. The Greeks often imagined death this way, not necessarily as punishment, not necessarily as reward, but as passage. A movement from one condition into another. The ferryman symbolizes that transition. Nothing more, nothing less. Far above, invisible beneath layers of earth and stone. The world of the living continues. Children are born. Merchants bargain in marketplaces. Ships leave harbor. Sacred fires burn in temples. Life continues. Yet here, beneath everything, another journey continues as well. The endless crossing, the endless arrival. The endless passage of souls. Charon never rests. His work never ends. Because death never ends, the boat gradually disappears into the mist. Torchlight fades. Darkness returns. Yet before the shoreline vanishes entirely, you notice something curious. Carved into a weathered stone near the water's edge appears an ancient symbol. Its meaning remains uncertain. Some traditions claim it represented safe passage. Others preserve entirely different interpretations. Historians continue to debate its significance. No definitive answer survives. The mystery remains. Another reminder that the underworld never fully reveals itself. Some questions must travel with you. The shoreline slowly disappears behind drifting mist. The river falls silent. Ahead, new pathways emerge through the darkness. And beyond those pathways waits another destination. A place where souls are judged. A place where lives are weighed. A place where memory, action, and destiny converge. The halls of the judges await, and there, the journey of every mortal becomes something more than a simple crossing. There, choices begin to matter. The shore fades behind you. The dark waters of the crossing disappear into mist. And the steady silence of Charon's river becomes a distant memory. Ahead stretches a broad stone road illuminated by scattered torches whose flames burn without smoke. The air feels still, not cold, not warm, simply unchanged. Time itself seems different here. You continue walking through the kingdom beneath the earth, following a path traveled by countless souls before you. The road winds between enormous pillars of black stone. Their surfaces shimmer faintly in the torchlight, far above. Hidden beyond layers of earth and mountain, the stars continue their silent courses. But here, beneath the world of the living, another order governs existence. A different kind of justice, a different kind of truth. The Greeks believed that death ended many things, yet it did not end accountability. This idea carried enormous significance. Life might feel uncertain, fortune might appear unfair. The wicked sometimes prospered, the honorable sometimes suffered. Yet beyond death waited judgment, not perfect certainty, not always harsh punishment, but evaluation, a weighing of lives. And so your journey now leads toward the judges of souls. Ahead, a vast hall emerges from the darkness. Its architecture resembles a temple and a palace combined. Massive bronze doors stand open. Columns disappear into distant shadows. The scent of incense drifts through the still air. Soft flames flicker within hundreds of wall-mounted lamps. The hall feels solemn, yet not frightening. Ancient Greek ideas about judgment differed from many later religious traditions. The emphasis often rested less upon absolute condemnation and more upon balance, upon understanding, upon fitting each soul to its proper place. You enter the hall. The floor beneath your feet gleams like polished obsidian. Every sound echoes softly. Every movement feels important. At the far end stand three figures. The judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, Aeacus, once mortal kings, now entrusted with divine responsibility. The choice of former rulers is meaningful. The Greeks often admired wisdom earned through experience. Who better to judge human lives than those who once lived them? Who better to understand ambition, kindness, pride, courage, and failure? The judges know these things because they experienced them. You approach slowly. Torchlight dances across the chamber. The atmosphere feels neither welcoming nor hostile, only impartial, like a scale awaiting weight. Ancient traditions vary somewhat regarding the exact roles of each judge. Some accounts assign specific responsibilities, others describe them working together. Historians continue debating how these traditions developed over time. Regional differences likely influenced many versions, yet all surviving accounts preserve the same central image. Lives are examined. Choices matter. Character matters. The Greeks did not imagine fate as entirely separate from responsibility. The two often existed side by side. You watch as a soul steps forward. No accusation is spoken. No dramatic trial unfolds. Instead, memories seem to surround the figure. Acts of kindness, moments of selfishness, promises kept, promises broken, years lived, relationships formed, decisions made. The imagery feels almost dreamlike, yet it reflects something deeply human. Every life becomes a story, and stories possess meaning. Ancient audiences likely found comfort in this belief, not because judgment guaranteed reward, but because existence itself mattered. Choices mattered, even when no one else noticed. A farmer tending fields honestly, a parent caring for children, a friend keeping faith during difficult times. Such actions might seem small, yet within the hall of judgment, nothing is entirely forgotten. The thought connects naturally to an earlier theme, memory. The river Lethe offered forgetfulness, yet before forgetfulness comes remembrance. A life must first. You continue observing the chamber. The judges remain calm. Their expressions reveal little. Perhaps that is appropriate. Justice often requires distance from emotion, not cruelty, not indifference, balance. The Greeks valued moderation in many aspects of life. Excess frequently led to disaster. Pride invited downfall. Greed invited suffering. Wisdom lay between extremes. The judges seem to embody that principle. Nearby burns a sacred flame unlike any seen in the world above. Its light glows silver rather than gold. The fire produces no smoke, no heat, only illumination, a divine sign. Perhaps or perhaps a symbol created by generations of storytellers. The exact meaning remains uncertain. Another interpretation survives in some traditions, yet uncertainty has become a familiar companion throughout the underworld. Not every mystery demands resolution. The hall itself encourages reflection. You begin thinking about the stories ancient Greeks told around household fires. Stories of heroes, stories of kings, stories of ordinary people, again and again. Those tales explored character, not perfection. Character. Even the greatest heroes possessed flaws. Even respected rulers made mistakes. The judges understand this. They are not searching for impossible purity. They are seeking truth, a life honestly revealed. The sound of distant water echoes faintly through the chamber. Perhaps one of the underworld rivers flows nearby. The reminder feels appropriate, like the rivers. Judgment forms part of the journey, a necessary passage, a transition toward whatever comes next. One soul moves onward, another approaches. The process continues, steady, orderly, endless, much like Charon's crossing, much like Hades' rule, much like death itself. The underworld functions because every part serves its purpose. The ferryman transports. The judges evaluate. The king governs. Together they maintain balance. The Greeks often valued order because disorder felt so dangerous. Storms destroyed ships. Wars shattered cities. Disease struck without warning. Order provided stability. Even death required structure. Without it, chaos would return. You pause beside one of the great pillars. Its surface bears ancient carvings. Heroes, kings, travelers, faces worn smooth by time. Among them appears a familiar image, a cypress tree. The same symbol encountered near the beginning of your journey. A quiet callback. A reminder that memory continues weaving through every stage of the story. The dead are judged partly because their lives remain remembered, at least for a while. The carvings fade into shadow as you continue onward. Beyond the hall lie the final destinations of souls, fields of peace, regions of punishment, mysteries still deeper. Soon you will see them. But first, one final question lingers. What truly determines where a soul belongs? Ancient Greeks offered different answers. Some emphasized virtue, others emphasized destiny. Others still preserved traditions too complex for simple explanation. The debate continues even now. And perhaps that uncertainty is itself meaningful. Human beings have always searched for perfect justice. Whether they have ever fully found it remains another mystery. Ahead, distant pathways begin to open. 3 roads, 3 possibilities. And beyond them stretch the landscapes that define eternity itself. The fields beyond death are waiting. The hall of judgment grows quiet behind you. The silver flame fades into the distance. The voices of the judges disappear into shadow. Ahead, 3 roads stretch through the underworld, each leading toward a different destiny. The air feels strangely calm, not empty, expectant, as though the kingdom itself is waiting to reveal another of its secrets. You stand at the place where judgment ends and eternity begins. The Greeks imagined many possibilities for what happened after death. Their beliefs changed across centuries. Poets, priests, philosophers, and storytellers often described the afterlife differently. Yet certain images endured, certain landscapes remained, and those landscapes shaped how generations understood mortality itself. The first road leads toward a vast plain covered in soft gray light. Mist drifts across endless fields. The ground feels smooth beneath your feet. The silence is deep, yet not unpleasant. This is Asphodel, the Asphodel Meadows. For many Greeks, this was the destination of ordinary souls, neither heroes nor villains, neither blessed nor cursed, simply people, the countless men and women who lived ordinary lives. Farmers, fishermen, craftsmen, mothers, children, travelers, people whose names history would eventually forget. The image carries a quiet sadness, yet also a certain dignity. Not everyone becomes legendary. Not everyone leaves monuments behind. Most lives pass gently into memory. The Greeks understood this reality, and so they created a place for ordinary souls. You walk through the meadows. Pale flowers sway in the still air. Their petals resemble moonlight resting upon the earth. The scent is faint, almost impossible to identify. Figures move slowly among the fields. Not suffering, not celebrating, simply existing. The landscape feels dreamlike. Some ancient poets describe the dead here as shadowy reflections of their former selves. Others imagined more awareness, more memory. Historians continue debating how these ideas evolved. No single vision ever dominated completely. The mystery remained. Perhaps that is why the Asphodel meadows feel so powerful. They resist certainty. The fields seem suspended between remembrance and forgetting, between identity and silence. You pause among the flowers. A familiar question returns. What remains after memory fades? The river Lethe offered one answer. The meadows offer another. Perhaps something endures even when names are forgotten. Perhaps existence itself leaves traces. The Greeks never entirely resolved such questions, and neither does the landscape around you. The path continues. Gradually, the mist thins. The air grows colder. The light becomes dimmer, far ahead. Distant cliffs rise from darkness. A low sound echoes across the underworld. Not thunder, something deeper, older. A warning. Ancient traditions often spoke of another destination. A place reserved for those whose actions disrupted cosmic order. Those who betrayed sacred laws. Those whose pride exceeded all limits. The Greeks called this place Tartarus. You approach cautiously. The landscape changes dramatically. The ground becomes rough. The air feels heavy. Dark chasms stretch into depths impossible to measure. Torchlight flickers against black stone walls. The atmosphere carries tension, yet even here. The myths contain complexity. Modern audiences sometimes imagine Tartarus as the Greek equivalent of eternal damnation. The reality is more nuanced. Only a relatively small number of figures appear here in surviving myths. Most are extraordinary offenders. Kings whose arrogance challenged the gods. Individuals whose crimes violated sacred boundaries. The punishments often serve symbolic purposes, lessons embodied in stories, warnings preserved through generations. The Greeks loved such symbolism. Actions produced consequences. Excess invited correction. Pride invited downfall. These themes appear again and again. You look into the darkness below. Somewhere beyond sight lie figures whose stories will emerge later in your journey. Sisyphus, Tantalus, Ixion, names destined to become famous, yet even here, uncertainty survives. Some researchers believe certain punishments changed over time. Others suggest local traditions shape the stories differently. Another interpretation survives for nearly every myth. The mystery remains, and perhaps it always will. You leave the shadowed cliffs behind. The atmosphere begins to change once more. The air grows warmer. The darkness softens. A gentle breeze moves across the landscape. For the first time since entering the underworld, you hear something unexpected. Music. Distant. Beautiful. The sound drifts across rolling fields illuminated by golden light. Ahead lies Elysium. The Elysian Fields, the most celebrated destination in the Greek afterlife, a place associated with heroes, favored individuals, and extraordinary souls, yet even here. Questions remain. Who truly qualified for Elysium? Ancient sources rarely agree completely. Some traditions reserve it for heroes. Others include the righteous. Others preserve more complicated requirements. The Greeks themselves debated such matters. You step into the fields. The transformation feels remarkable. Green grass stretches toward distant horizons. Trees shimmer beneath soft sunlight. Flowers bloom beside clear streams. The scent of wild herbs fills the air. Birds sing among branches. The landscape resembles the most beautiful parts of Greece, yet untouched by hardship, untouched by loss. Ancient audiences likely found comfort in this vision, not because everyone expected to reach it, but because it represented hope, the possibility that greatness, virtue, or divine favor might continue beyond death. You walk beside a stream flowing through Elysium. The water sparkles beneath golden light. Nearby stand figures engaged in conversation. Others wander through gardens. Some gaze toward distant mountains. The atmosphere feels peaceful, not ecstatic. Peaceful. The distinction matters. The Greeks often valued harmony over excess. Even paradise reflects balance. A gentle omen appears. A white bird crosses the sky above the fields. Its wings catch the sunlight. Then it disappears beyond the horizon. A simple image. Yet ancient storytellers often used birds as signs. messengers between realms, symbols of transition. Perhaps this one carries meaning, or perhaps it is merely part of the landscape. The uncertainty remains. You sit beside the stream for a moment and reflect upon everything you have seen. 3 destinations, 3 visions of eternity. Asphodel, Tartarus, Elysium. Together they reveal something important about Greek thought. The afterlife was not merely about punishment and reward. It was about meaning, about memory, about consequence, about the stories lives create, far away, hidden within another part of the underworld. The lonely king continues his watch. Hades governs all these regions. Yet another story is approaching, a story that will transform both his kingdom and his heart. A story foretold by signs already appearing across the earth above. For in a distant meadow beneath the sunlight, a flower is about to bloom, and when it does, destiny will descend into the world, far above the underworld. Spring has returned to the earth. You leave the quiet fields of Elysium behind and rise once more toward the world of sunlight. The darkness of the kingdom below gradually fades. Cool stone passages give way to open skies. The scent of flowers drifts through the air. For the first time in many sections, you stand beneath the sun. Golden light washes across hillsides. Olive groves shimmer in the breeze. Streams sparkle among wildflowers. Birdsong fills the countryside. The contrast feels almost startling, yet this return to the living world is necessary. For one of the most important stories in all Greek mythology is about to begin, and it begins not with death, but with beauty. You walk through a meadow stretching across the countryside. The grass feels soft beneath your feet. Purple crocuses bloom beside white lilies. Butterflies drift lazily through warm air. The scent of spring surrounds you. Ancient Greeks lived closely with the rhythms of nature. The arrival of spring carried enormous significance. Fields awakened. Crops began growing. The world emerged from winter's sleep. It is no surprise that one of their most beloved myths became intertwined with the changing seasons. At the center of this story stands Persephone, daughter of Demeter, goddess of grain, harvest, and fertility. Persephone appears in many ancient sources as a youthful figure associated with flowers, renewal, and springtime itself. Yet destiny is already moving toward her. The earlier warnings of your journey begin to echo once more. Prophecies, signs, dreams, the quiet certainty that important events often cast shadows before they arrive. Some ancient traditions tell of unusual omens before Persephone's fate unfolds. A strange silence among birds, dreams that troubled temple priests, unseasonable winds moving across sacred groves. Historians continue debating how many such details belong to the earliest versions of the myth. Yet the presence of omens feels natural. The story concerns nothing less than the balance between life and death. The universe itself seems to sense what approaches. You continue walking through the meadow. Ahead, Persephone gathers flowers with companions. The scene appears peaceful, almost impossibly peaceful. Sunlight catches in her hair. The breeze stirs the grass around her. Laughter drifts through the warm afternoon air. The world seems suspended in perfect harmony, and perhaps that harmony makes what follows feel even more powerful. Ancient storytellers often placed moments of great change beside moments of great beauty. The contrast deepens both. Persephone notices a flower unlike any she has seen before. Different traditions describe it differently. A narcissus, a wondrous blossom, a divine creation. Its appearance immediately feels unusual. The flower glows among the grass. Its beauty seems almost supernatural. The Greeks often used flowers as symbols of transition. Beauty that blooms briefly, life that changes unexpectedly, moments that cannot last forever. You watch as Persephone approaches. The meadow falls strangely quiet. The breeze softens. Even the birds seem to pause. A sign, a warning, a moment suspended between possibilities. Then she reaches for the flower. The earth opens. The image remains one of the most dramatic in Greek mythology. The ground splits apart. Darkness appears beneath sunlight. A chariot rises from the depths. Black horses surge upward, and standing within the chariot is Hades, the ruler of the dead, the lonely king you met beneath the earth. Ancient audiences knew immediately what this moment represented. Not merely an abduction, not merely a divine romance, a collision between two worlds, life and death, spring and shadow, growth and stillness. The symbolism reaches far beyond the characters themselves. The Greeks often understood myths on multiple levels simultaneously. The story happened, and it meant something. Both truths could coexist. You watch as Hades carries Persephone away. The earth closes behind them. The meadow becomes silent once more. Only scattered flowers remain. The sunlight continues shining. The birds eventually resume their songs. Yet everything has changed. A daughter has vanished. And no one yet understands the consequences. The emotional center of the story now shifts. Demeter, mother, goddess, guardian of the harvest. Soon she will discover what has happened, and grief will transform the world. But before that grief arrives, you pause to consider Hades himself. Why did he do this? The question has fascinated listeners for thousands of years. Ancient sources offer different shades of interpretation. Some portray the act harshly. Others emphasize divine arrangements involving Zeus. Some later traditions suggest mutual affection developed over time. Others remain more ambiguous. Modern readers often struggle with these variations. The truth is that myths rarely fit neatly into modern expectations. They evolve. They reflect changing cultures. They preserve contradictions. And Hades remains one of mythology's most complex figures. Was he motivated by loneliness, by desire, by destiny? Perhaps some combination of all three. No surviving source provides complete certainty. The mystery remains, yet one fact is clear. The ruler of the underworld has changed his kingdom forever. You walk toward the edge of the meadow. Clouds begin gathering far away. The sunlight softens. A distant wind moves through the grass. The first signs of sorrow approach. A subtle omen appears. Several petals from the strange flower rise briefly into the air. The breeze carries them across the field. Then they vanish. The image feels symbolic. A beautiful thing disturbed. A balance broken. A cycle beginning. Ancient listeners would have recognized the significance immediately. The earth itself is responding. And soon Demeter will respond as well. Her grief will darken fields. Silence, harvests, challenge the gods themselves. The earlier theme of memory returns once more. Persephone's disappearance will not be forgotten. It will reshape the cosmos, just as the prophecy once reshaped the age of the Titans. Small moments create vast consequences. A flower, a choice, a journey below. The pattern continues, even now, deep beneath the earth. Hades guides Persephone through the pathways of his kingdom. The lonely ruler is no longer alone. Yet whether companionship will bring peace remains uncertain. For above them, a mother is beginning to search, and her search will become one of the most powerful stories ever told in ancient Greece. The petals have vanished into the wind. The meadow that once echoed with laughter now feels strangely empty. Sunlight still warms the grass. Streams continue flowing through the countryside. Birds still cross the sky above the hills. Yet something is missing. And soon the entire world will feel that absence. You walk across the field where Persephone disappeared. The strange flower is gone. Only flattened grass remains. The earth shows no sign of having opened. No trace remains of the chariot. No mark reveals the path taken into the underworld. The silence feels unnatural, almost deliberate, as though the world itself is hiding a secret. Ancient storytellers often understood grief this way, not as a sudden storm, but as a growing awareness, the realization that something precious has vanished. The moment when absence becomes undeniable. Demeter experiences that moment now. The goddess searches for her daughter, at first calmly, then urgently, then desperately. You follow her across the Greek countryside. The journey carries you through olive groves shimmering beneath afternoon sunlight, across rocky hillsides covered in thyme, along roads traveled by merchants, shepherds, and pilgrims. Everywhere she asks the same question. Where is Persephone? No answer comes. The search continues. Day follows day. The goddess wanders farther. The scent of dust rises from sunlit roads. Sea winds move through coastal villages. Sacred fires burn before temple altars. Still she searches. The Greeks understood the bond between parent and child deeply. Many listeners would have recognized Demeter's pain immediately. The story may involve gods, yet its emotions remain profoundly human. Loss, fear, uncertainty, love. These feelings require no divine power to understand. As evening falls, Demeter arrives at a remote shoreline. The sea stretches toward the horizon beneath a sky filled with stars. Waves strike the rocks below. The air smells of salt and seaweed. She stands alone beside the water, waiting, hoping. The image carries quiet melancholy. Even a goddess can feel helpless. Ancient myths often reveal divinity through vulnerability rather than perfection. The gods possess immense power, yet they still suffer, still fear, still grieve. That complexity helps explain why these stories endured. The search continues through the night. Torches burn along lonely roads. Their flames flicker in the darkness. Demeter carries them from village to village, from valley to valley, across mountains and islands. The landscape of Greece unfolds around her. Harbors crowded with fishing boats, marketplaces filled with traders, sacred groves hidden among cypress trees, white temples rising above rocky hills. Every place becomes part of the search. Every path leads nowhere. An omen appears, several nights into her wandering. Demeter dreams. Ancient sources preserve different versions of divine dreams throughout Greek mythology. Dreams often function as messages, warnings, or glimpses of hidden truths. This dream feels uncertain, fragmented, a shadow moving beneath the earth, a distant throne, a flower falling into darkness. The images reveal little, yet they deepen her unease. The Greeks frequently used dreams this way, not to provide answers, to reveal mysteries. The dream raises questions rather than resolving them. And so the search continues. You travel beside Demeter through a sacred grove illuminated by moonlight. The leaves shimmer silver beneath the stars. Owls call softly from distant branches. The night feels beautiful, yet sorrow lingers beneath that beauty. Days become weeks. The goddess grows weary, not physically. Divine beings do not tire as mortals do, but emotionally, spiritually. The burden of uncertainty becomes heavier. The earlier warning from the Meadow echoes again. A balance has been broken, though no one yet understands how deeply. At last, help arrives from an unexpected source. Different traditions preserve different details, yet many versions of the myth include witnesses, beings who observed what happened. The sun itself, a divine observer, a watcher crossing the sky each day. Helios, the all-seeing one. The Greeks often associated sunlight with truth. Secrets hide in darkness. Light reveals. The symbolism is simple, yet powerful. Demeter eventually learns enough to begin understanding what occurred. Persephone did not simply vanish. She was taken. The realization strikes like thunder. Grief transforms. It becomes anger. The emotional shift changes everything. You stand beside a hillside overlooking fertile farmland. Golden grain waves in the breeze. Farmers work beneath the afternoon sun. Children play near distant houses. Life appears abundant, yet the abundance is about to end. Demeter withdraws from her divine responsibilities. The decision seems almost unimaginable. She is the goddess of harvest, growth, agriculture. Without her attention, the earth begins changing, slowly at first, then dramatically. Fields stop flourishing. Seeds fail to sprout. Trees produce fewer fruits. The scent of growing crops fades from the countryside. The Greeks depended heavily upon agriculture. They understood the fragility of food supplies. Droughts, poor harvests, harsh seasons. Such realities shaped everyday life. Through Demeter's grief, mythology gave emotional meaning to those experiences. The earth itself mourns. Nature reflects loss. The symbolism feels profound. Love and survival become intertwined. You continue traveling across Greece. The transformation becomes impossible to ignore. Once green fields turn pale, farmers stare anxiously toward the sky. Sacred fires burn lower. Festivals grow quieter. A strange stillness settles across the land. Ancient listeners likely felt the tension immediately. The crisis extends beyond one family. The entire world is becoming endangered. The consequences of Persephone's disappearance reach everyone. That widening circle of impact gives the story remarkable depth. Personal sorrow becomes cosmic sorrow. One missing daughter threatens all creation. Yet another mystery remains. What is happening below? What thoughts fill Persephone's heart? How does Hades view the unfolding crisis? The myth does not reveal everything at once. The underworld remains hidden. Its secrets wait beneath the earth. A callback emerges as twilight falls. You pass another grove of cypress trees. The same trees encountered near the beginning of the journey, symbols of mourning, symbols of remembrance. Their dark silhouettes stand motionless against the fading sky. The image feels appropriate. Memory continues guiding the story. Demeter refuses to forget, and because she refuses to forget, the world itself cannot move forward. The search has become more than a search. It has become a challenge, a demand, a force capable of confronting even Zeus, far above. The stars begin appearing far below. The underworld remains silent, and somewhere between them, a decision approaches. For the gods can no longer ignore what Demeter's grief is doing to the world. Something must change, or life itself may begin to wither away. The world is beginning to fade. You stand upon a hillside overlooking fields that should be green, yet the colors seem muted now. The golden abundance of harvest has diminished. The scent of growing grain no longer fills the air as it once did. The earth is grieving, or so the ancient Greeks imagined, across villages and islands. People watch the changes with growing concern. Farmers kneel beside barren soil. Shepherds search hillsides where grass grows thin. Sacred festivals become quieter. The absence of Persephone has become larger than a single loss. It now threatens the balance of existence itself. And so, for the first time since the beginning of this story, even the rulers of Olympus must act. You lift your eyes toward the heavens. High above the mortal world stands Olympus, gleaming beneath the light of the stars. Ancient poets described it as a place beyond ordinary weather, beyond ordinary suffering. Marble halls shine with divine radiance. Golden fires burn throughout the night. Immortal voices echo through vast chambers. Yet even Olympus cannot ignore what is happening below. The fields are dying. The sacrifices of mortals are decreasing. The bond between gods and humanity is weakening. Zeus understands the danger. The king of the gods now faces a difficult problem. His brother Hades possesses a lawful claim to Persephone according to certain traditions. Yet Demeter's grief threatens the survival of the living world. The balance must be restored. The Greeks often explored such dilemmas. Conflicts where every choice carries consequences. Situations without easy answers. Perhaps that complexity explains why the myth endured. No character emerges entirely victorious. No character escapes unchanged. A compromise approaches. You travel now through shadowed passages beneath the earth. The underworld opens before you once more. Torchlight flickers against black stone. Mist drifts across silent pathways. The familiar scent of damp earth fills the air. Far away, rivers murmur through hidden caverns. The kingdom feels different than before, less lonely. Persephone now resides here. The young goddess who once wandered flower-filled meadows walks the halls of the dead. Ancient traditions differ regarding her feelings during this time. Some emphasize sorrow. Others suggest gradual adaptation. A few later interpretations even hint at growing understanding between Persephone and Hades. The sources never provide complete certainty, and perhaps they were never meant to. Human relationships rarely fit simple categories. Neither do divine ones. You enter a chamber illuminated by blue-white flames. The light casts soft shadows across polished floors. At the center stands Persephone, no longer merely the maiden of spring. Something has begun changing. The transformation remains incomplete, yet it has started. The Greeks often associated journeys into darkness with personal growth. Not pleasant growth, not easy growth, but transformation. The person who enters a difficult experience rarely emerges exactly the same. The same principle seems to apply here. A quiet omen appears. A raven settles briefly upon a distant pillar. Its black feathers shimmer in the strange light. Then it flies away into darkness. Ancient audiences frequently interpreted ravens as messengers or signs. Yet the meaning remains uncertain. A warning, a transition, a symbol of change. The mystery lingers. Soon a messenger arrives from Olympus. Hermes, the swift traveler between worlds, guide of souls, bearer of divine commands. The choice feels appropriate. Hermes moves freely where others cannot. Between heaven and earth, between life and death, between certainty and mystery. He carries Zeus's decision. Persephone must return. The world above cannot survive without her. Demeter's grief has become too powerful. The earth itself demands resolution. The message echoes through the halls of the underworld. A moment of stillness follows, and here the story reaches one of its most famous scenes, one of the simplest and one of the most symbolic, the pomegranate. Ancient storytellers describe Persephone consuming seeds from the fruit of the underworld. The exact number varies. Some traditions mention 4, others 6. Still others preserve different figures. Historians continue debating which versions may be older. Yet the symbolism matters more than arithmetic. Food establishes connection. Sharing nourishment creates belonging. Across countless cultures, eating carries meaning beyond survival. The Greeks understood this well. By consuming food within the underworld, Persephone becomes linked to it. The act cannot be undone. You imagine the scene, the chamber illuminated by sacred flames, the deep red seeds gleaming like jewels, the silence surrounding the moment. A small action, yet one carrying enormous consequences. Greek myths often operate this way. Destiny turns upon seemingly simple choices. A flower touched, a promise spoken, a fruit tasted. The scale of the action remains small. The scale of the consequence becomes immense. Ancient listeners likely recognized another layer of symbolism, the pomegranate itself, filled with countless seeds hidden within a single fruit. Life concealed inside darkness, growth concealed inside stillness, death and renewal intertwined, much like the story itself. The bargain begins taking shape. Persephone will return to her mother, but not permanently. Part of each year will belong to the world above. Part will belong to the world below. The compromise satisfies no one completely, yet it prevents disaster. The Greeks often valued balance over perfection. Reality rarely provides ideal outcomes. Wisdom sometimes means accepting partial solutions. This myth reflects that philosophy beautifully. You ascend briefly toward the surface world. The change becomes visible almost immediately. Demeter feels hope returning. The earth responds. Green shoots emerge from the soil. Trees prepare new blossoms. The scent of life gradually returns. The cycle begins again. Ancient Greeks saw in this story an explanation for the changing seasons. Spring arrives when Persephone returns. Winter approaches when she descends once more. Modern listeners recognize the symbolism. Yet ancient audiences likely experienced something deeper as well. The story gave emotional meaning to nature's rhythms, growth and loss, presence and absence, reunion and separation. The seasons became expressions of love. A callback echoes from earlier sections. The prophecy that shaped Cronus's downfall. The warning that destiny cannot be escaped. Once again, fate has worked through unexpected paths. No one entirely controls the outcome. Not Zeus, not Demeter, not Hades. Destiny moves through all their choices as twilight settles across the recovering earth. Another question emerges. What happens next? Persephone will return, but she is no longer merely the maiden gathering flowers. The underworld has changed her. Experience has changed her. Soon she will assume a new role. Not captive, not visitor, queen. And when that transformation is complete, the lonely king below will no longer rule alone. Spring returns to the world. You stand upon a hillside overlooking valleys that only weeks before seemed lifeless. Now, green shoots emerge from the soil. Wildflowers bloom beside streams. Olive trees sway beneath clear skies. The scent of growing things fills the air once more. Farmers return to their fields. Birdsong echoes through the countryside. Sacred festivals awaken. Life has resumed its ancient rhythm. Demeter's grief has eased. Her daughter has returned. Yet the story is not truly about returning. It is about transformation. For Persephone is no longer the same goddess who once wandered carefree among flowers. The underworld has changed her, and the changes will continue. The Greeks often understood important journeys this way. A person leaves home, experiences something profound, then returns altered. The return may look familiar, but it is never identical. Something has shifted. Something has been learned. The same pattern now unfolds within the life of Persephone. You walk through a meadow glowing beneath the afternoon sun. The flowers are beautiful. The breeze feels warm. The scene resembles the world she knew before her descent. Yet there is a difference. A quiet depth. A maturity not present before. Ancient artists and poets gradually began depicting Persephone in new ways. Not only as the maiden of spring, not only as Demeter's daughter, but as a ruler. a queen, a goddess whose authority extends into the realm of the dead. The transformation fascinates many scholars. Few figures in Greek mythology experience such a dramatic evolution. Persephone begins as a symbol of youth and renewal. She becomes something far more complex, a bridge between life and death, between sunlight and shadow, between growth and remembrance. The symbolism is extraordinary. You descend once more into the underworld. The familiar pathways welcome you back. Torchlight flickers against cavern walls. Mist drifts above black rivers. The scent of stone and earth fills the still air. Yet something feels different here as well. The kingdom no longer seems quite as lonely. The great halls remain vast. The shadows remain deep. But another presence now exists beside Hades. Persephone walks these halls. Ancient traditions increasingly portray her not as a passive figure, but as an active ruler. She listens to petitions. She participates in judgments. She shares responsibility for the kingdom. The underworld gains a queen, and with her arrival, its character subtly changes. You enter the throne hall. Blue flames burn within bronze braziers. The polished floor reflects the strange light. At the far end stand two thrones, not one, two. Upon one sits Hades, calm, silent, composed. Upon the other sits Persephone. The contrast between them is striking, yet so is their harmony. The lonely king no longer rules in solitude. A question lingers. Did companionship bring him happiness? The myths rarely say directly. Greek mythology often avoids explicit emotional declarations. Instead, emotions reveal themselves through actions and symbols. The shared throne, the shared kingdom, the enduring partnership. These details suggest their own answers. Though certainty remains elusive, another interpretation survives in later traditions, and mystery continues to surround the rulers of the dead. A small omen appears as you watch. A torch flame suddenly burns brighter. Its light momentarily illuminates carvings upon the wall, images of flowers intertwined with pomegranates. Spring linked with the underworld, life linked with death. Then the brightness fades. The symbolism remains. Ancient audiences likely appreciated such imagery immediately. The queen herself embodies balance. Neither realm claims her entirely. She belongs partly to both. This dual identity grants Persephone unusual power. She understands the living. She understands the dead. Few beings can claim the same. You follow her through the kingdom. The rivers continue their endless flow. Charon guides souls across dark waters. The judges weigh lives. The machinery of eternity continues functioning. Yet Persephone's presence adds a new dimension: compassion, memory, connection. The Greeks often associated female divine figures with mediation and transition. Persephone performs precisely that role. She connects worlds. The relationship between Hades and Persephone evolves gradually within mythological tradition. Some early sources remain sparse. Later storytellers expand upon the partnership. Poets explore its emotional dimensions. Religious traditions develop its symbolic meaning. Historians continue debating exactly how these portrayals changed over time. Yet one fact remains consistent. Persephone becomes central to the identity of the underworld itself. The kingdom is no longer solely Hades' realm. It becomes theirs. You walk beside the river Lethe. Its waters remain calm, clear, mysterious. The earlier question returns. Who are you without memory? Persephone seems to offer an answer. Memory matters, even when seasons change, even when journeys alter us. The self survives transformation, not unchanged, but surviving nonetheless. The Greeks often found wisdom in cycles. Winter becomes spring. Spring becomes summer. Summer yields to autumn. Then winter returns. Nothing remains fixed. Yet patterns endure. Persephone embodies that principle perfectly. Her yearly movement between worlds reflects the movement of nature itself. The myth becomes more than narrative. It becomes explanation, meaning, a way of understanding existence. Far above, farmers watch crops grow and harvests arrive. Far below, souls continue entering the kingdom of the dead. The cycles mirror one another. Life and death become partners rather than enemies. This idea lies at the heart of much Greek mythology. Opposites often depend upon one another. Day requires night. Sea requires shore. Life requires death. The rulers of the underworld symbolize that balance. A callback emerges from a much earlier in the journey. the hidden child swallowed by Cronus, the silent god overlooked among his siblings. Hades once existed in shadow, overshadowed by Zeus and Poseidon, yet now his story reveals unexpected depth. He is not merely lord of the dead, he is part of a partnership that sustains cosmic order. The lonely king has become something more. Twilight settles across the underworld. The blue flames burn steadily. The rivers continue flowing, and the queen sits beside her king. Together they preside over a kingdom every soul must eventually enter, a kingdom still filled with mysteries. And soon, one of those mysteries will attract an extraordinary visitor, a mortal whose music can move hearts, trees, rivers, and perhaps even death itself. His name is Orpheus, and his journey toward the underworld has already begun. The music begins far above the earth. You leave the throne hall behind and rise once more from the kingdom below. The rivers fade into darkness. The blue flames disappear. The cool air of the underworld gives way to the warmth of the living world. Night settles across Greece. Stars fill the heavens. Silver moonlight washes over mountains and forests. The scent of pine drifts through the air, somewhere in the distance. Waves strike a rocky shore. The world feels peaceful. Yet another story is unfolding, a story unlike any you have encountered so far. Not a tale of gods overthrowing gods, not a tale of kingdoms divided, a tale of love and of loss. The Greeks understood that even the greatest myths often begin quietly. A conversation, a meeting, a song. The story of Orpheus begins with music. You walk through a moonlit valley where a lone figure sits beside a stream. The water murmurs softly over smooth stones. Fireflies drift above wildflowers. The stars reflect upon the dark surface of the water. In the center of this tranquil scene sits Orpheus. Ancient traditions describe him as the greatest musician who ever lived. His songs possessed extraordinary power. Trees bent toward his melodies. Animals gathered to listen. Rivers seemed to slow their currents. Even stones appeared moved by the beauty of his music. The image feels magical, yet it also reflects something deeply human. The Greeks recognized the power of art. Music could comfort sorrow, strengthen courage, preserve memory, connect people across generations. Orpheus became the ultimate symbol of that power. His lyre rests in his hands. The strings shimmer beneath the moonlight. When he plays, the valley seems transformed. The breeze slows, leaves stop rustling. Silence itself listens. You sit nearby and hear the melody. The music feels impossible to describe. Gentle, melancholic, beautiful. A sound carrying both joy and longing at once. Perhaps that is why the myth endured, because the greatest music often contains both. Orpheus is not alone. Beside him sits Eurydice, his beloved. Ancient sources tell little about her compared to many mythological figures. Yet her importance remains immense. She is the heart of the story, the reason the impossible journey will soon begin. Together, they seem content. The moon rises higher. The stars shine brightly overhead. The future appears full of promise. Yet Greek mythology rarely allows happiness to remain untouched for long. A warning approaches. A shadow gathers beyond the edges of the scene. Ancient storytellers often inserted omens before moments of tragedy. Not because the characters understood them, because the audience did. A distant owl calls from the darkness. The sound echoes through the valley. A small sign, perhaps meaningless, perhaps not. The Greeks frequently left room for interpretation. The mystery remains. Days pass. The lovers wander through forests and meadows. The seasons continue their eternal cycle. The world feels alive, hopeful. Then fate intervenes. The details vary across traditions. Yet the outcome remains the same. Eurydice dies. Some accounts tell of a serpent hidden among the grass. Others preserve slight variations. Historians continue debating how different versions developed. The uncertainty surrounding the details matters less than the consequence. Loss arrives suddenly, without warning, without fairness. The Greeks understood this reality all too well. Life could change in a single moment. A storm at sea, a battlefield wound, a sudden illness, or a snake concealed beneath flowers. You stand within a forest clearing where sunlight filters through leaves. The scent of earth and moss fills the air. Birdsong continues overhead. Nature remains beautiful. Yet sorrow has entered the world. Orpheus kneels beside Eurydice. The moment feels painfully quiet. The earlier theme of grief returns. Demeter searching for Persephone. Fields fading beneath her sorrow. Love confronting absence. The stories echo one another. Loss changes everything. Orpheus mourns. His music changes. The melodies, once filled with joy, now carry overwhelming sadness. Ancient poets imagined the natural world responding once again. Trees lean closer. Animals gather. Even rivers seem to listen. The image may sound fantastical, yet it reveals an important truth. Great sorrow often seeks expression. Art becomes a vessel. Music becomes memory. The Greeks understood this instinctively. Songs preserve what death attempts to erase. You follow Orpheus through mountains and valleys. The journey carries him across Greece, past white temples shining beneath the sun, past sacred groves of cypress, past harbors where ships rest upon calm waters. Every landscape reminds him of absence. Every beautiful thing deepens the ache. Eventually, an impossible idea begins forming. At first, it seems madness, a dream, a desperate fantasy. Yet the thought refuses to disappear. What if he could descend into the underworld? What if he could find Eurydice? What if music could accomplish what no mortal has ever achieved? The question feels absurd. Yet mythology often begins where ordinary logic ends. Ancient audiences would have recognized the enormity of the challenge immediately. The underworld is not a place mortals visit casually. The boundaries separating life and death exist for a reason. The earlier warning echoes once more. Do not mistake the road below for a road without consequences. Orpheus is about to test that truth. A dream comes to him one night. The stars shine above a lonely hillside. The wind moves softly through the grass. As he sleeps, he sees a distant road descending into darkness. Far below burns a pale light, and from that light comes a voice. Not clear enough to identify, not clear enough to understand fully. Only a message, a possibility, a path. Ancient storytellers often use dreams to open doors between worlds. The dream serves that purpose now. Whether it is a divine sign, a product of grief, or something else entirely remains uncertain. The mystery lingers, but the effect is undeniable. When morning arrives, Orpheus has made his decision. He will attempt the impossible. He will travel where no living mortal should go. He will seek the kingdom ruled by Hades and Persephone. He will challenge the boundary separating life from death, armed with nothing but music, nothing but love, and perhaps a little hope. The journey begins. Far beneath the earth, the rulers of the underworld remain unaware that a visitor is coming. A visitor whose songs may accomplish what armies never could. A visitor whose fate will become one of the most haunting lessons in all of Greek mythology. The road descends once more into darkness. You follow Orpheus as he leaves the familiar world behind. The hills of Greece fade into the distance. Olive groves disappear beyond the horizon. The warm scent of sunlight upon stone gradually gives way to cooler air, rising from hidden places beneath the earth. Ahead lies the impossible, the kingdom of Hades. Few mortals would willingly approach such a destination. Fewer still would attempt to leave it again. Yet grief has given Orpheus a kind of courage, or perhaps desperation. The line between them is often difficult to see. The Greeks understood this well. Love can inspire extraordinary acts. It can also lead people toward dangerous paths, sometimes both at once. You travel through a narrow mountain pass beneath moonlight. The stars shine brightly overhead. A cold wind moves across the rocks. Far below, waves strike unseen cliffs. The world feels suspended between beauty and sorrow. A fitting atmosphere for the journey ahead. Eventually, the familiar signs begin appearing. Cypress trees, ancient stones, silent caverns. The same symbols encountered earlier in your travels. A quiet callback. The road beneath the earth is opening again. This time for a living man. The entrance emerges from the darkness. A cavern vast enough to swallow torchlight itself. Mist drifts from its depths. The scent of damp earth fills the air. Orpheus pauses. For a moment, even he hesitates. Ancient storytellers rarely portrayed heroes as fearless. True courage often includes fear, the willingness to continue despite uncertainty, the willingness to step forward when every instinct urges retreat. Orpheus steps forward. The descent begins. The deeper you travel, the quieter the world becomes. Birdsong vanishes. The wind disappears. Only distant echoes remain, water dripping from unseen stone, the soft sound of footsteps, and occasionally, the faint vibration of lyre strings. Orpheus continues playing as he walks. The melodies drift through the darkness, gentle, melancholic, beautiful. The music feels like a memory refusing to fade. Soon the first guardian appears, Cerberus, the great hound of the underworld. Ancient artists depicted him in many ways, most famously with 3 heads, a creature standing watch over the boundaries between worlds, a living symbol of the truth that death is not meant to release its travelers. Cerberus represents permanence, the finality of crossing, the certainty that some doors close behind you. You see the hound waiting near a stone archway. Massive paws rest upon black rock. Eyes gleam in the torchlight. The creature seems capable of terrifying violence. Yet Orpheus does not draw a weapon. He does not challenge the guardian. Instead, he plays. The melody fills the cavern. Soft notes drift through the still air. The sound reaches Cerberus. The great hound listens. Its heads lower slowly. The tension fades. The guardian becomes calm. The path opens. Ancient audiences loved such moments, not because force triumphs, because force fails. Music succeeds where violence cannot. Beauty accomplishes what strength cannot achieve. The lesson remains powerful even now. You continue deeper into the kingdom of the dead. The rivers appear once more. Styx, Acheron, Lethe. Their waters move through darkness beneath flickering torchlight. The ferryman, Charon, waits beside his boat. The same ancient figure you encountered before. The same endless crossing. Yet this time something unprecedented occurs. Orpheus plays. The notes drift across the shore. Charon listens. The old ferryman who has guided countless souls pauses. The music reaches him too. Without protest, he allows passage. The boat glides across silent waters. A living man travels where only the dead should go. The boundary bends, not breaks, bends. The distinction matters. The Greeks often understood that extraordinary moments do not eliminate cosmic laws. They merely reveal their flexibility. For a brief time, under extraordinary circumstances, the journey continues. The judges watch. The souls gather. The fields of the dead grow quiet. Everywhere, Orpheus passes. The same thing happens. Listening, stillness, wonder. The underworld itself seems captivated. Ancient poets imagined entire landscapes responding. Trees ceasing their movement. Rivers slowing their currents. Even the punished souls of Tartarus pausing to hear. The imagery grows almost dreamlike. Yet that dreamlike quality serves a purpose. The Greeks wished to communicate something larger than literal events. Art possesses power. Stories possess power. Beauty possesses power. These forces reach places ordinary strength cannot. Eventually, the journey ends. The throne hall appears ahead. Blue flames burn within bronze braziers. Their light reflects across polished stone. The air remains perfectly still. At the far end sit Hades and Persephone, king and queen of the underworld, the rulers of the dead, the destination of every soul. For the first time, the lonely king and his queen face a mortal visitor unlike any before. Orpheus approaches. His lyre rests in his hands. The hall grows silent. No one speaks. No judgment has yet been made. A small omen appears. One of the blue flames suddenly brightens. Its light casts long shadows across the chamber. Then it settles once more. A sign, or perhaps coincidence. The uncertainty remains. The Greeks often preferred mystery to certainty. Orpheus begins to play. The melody fills the throne hall. Every note carries longing. Every note carries memory. Every note carries love. The song speaks of Eurydice, of sunlight on rivers, of shared laughter, of loss, of absence, of the unbearable silence left behind. The rulers listen. The judges listen. The souls listen. Even the kingdom itself seems to listen. The music transforms grief into something beautiful. Not because sorrow disappears, because it becomes understood. The Greeks recognized this process. Stories, poetry, music, all allow suffering to become meaningful. Orpheus offers precisely that gift. Ancient traditions describe the response with remarkable consistency. The rulers are moved. The king who governs the dead listens. The queen who understands both life and death listens. And together they make a decision. Mercy, a rare thing within the underworld. A condition follows, a warning, the kind that has echoed throughout your journey from the very beginning. Orpheus may lead Eurydice back to the world above. She may follow him. The impossible will be permitted. But one rule must be obeyed. One condition, one fragile thread upon which everything depends. He must not look back, not once, not until both have fully returned to the land of the living. The hall falls silent. The bargain has been made. The warning has been spoken. The opportunity exists, yet already a question lingers in the darkness. Can any human being carry such uncertainty? Can love endure without reassurance? Can faith overcome fear? The answer waits upon a road leading upward towards sunlight. And that road is about to become one of the most heartbreaking journeys in all mythology. The bargain has been accepted. The music has accomplished what no sword, army, or prayer could achieve. The rulers of the underworld have granted mercy. The impossible has become possible. And now only a single condition remains. Do not look back. The warning hangs in the air like a distant bell. Simple, clear, yet perhaps impossible. You stand within the throne hall as the agreement settles over the gathered souls. The blue flames burn steadily. The polished floor reflects their pale light. Hades and Persephone remain seated upon their thrones, silent, watchful. The decision has been made. What follows belongs entirely to Orpheus. The Greeks often built their greatest tragedies around moments like this. Not battles, not monsters, choices. A single decision carrying enormous consequences. The journey begins. Orpheus turns toward the road leading upward. The pathways of the underworld stretch ahead through shadow and torchlight. Mist drifts across ancient stones. The rivers continue their endless flow somewhere in the darkness. Behind him, unseen, follows Eurydice. That detail matters. Unseen. The condition requires trust. Trust without evidence. Trust without confirmation. Trust without certainty. The Greeks understood how difficult such trust can be, especially when love is involved. Especially when loss has already occurred once before. You walk beside Orpheus as he begins the ascent. The silence feels immense. No music accompanies him now. The lyre remains still. Only footsteps echo through the darkness. One set clearly audible. Another, perhaps present, or perhaps imagined. The uncertainty begins its work. The road climbs steadily upward. Torchlight flickers against stone walls. The air gradually changes. Warmer, lighter. The world above draws closer. Yet doubt draws closer as well. A familiar mystery emerges. Ancient sources preserve slightly different versions of this journey. Some emphasize external challenges. Others focus entirely upon Orpheus's thoughts. Historians continue debating how various traditions evolved. But all surviving versions preserve the same emotional truth. The struggle occurs within. Fear becomes the adversary. Not monsters, not rivers. Fear. The Greeks often recognized that the greatest obstacles are invisible. Anxiety, doubt, suspicion. These forces can be more powerful than any physical threat. Orpheus now confronts them alone. The path continues. Behind him. Silence. Ahead. Silence. No voice calls out. No hand reaches forward. No proof exists that Eurydice remains there. The condition grows heavier with every step. You pass the rivers once more. The waters of Lethe shimmer faintly in the darkness. The river of forgetfulness. The symbolism feels striking. Orpheus is attempting the opposite of forgetting. He is trying to preserve memory itself. To refuse loss. To reverse absence. Perhaps that is why this story resonates so deeply. Every human being understands the desire, the wish to recover what has vanished, the wish to undo grief, the wish to speak once more with those no longer present. The Greeks understood that longing, and they gave it a story. The road rises higher. A distant glow appears ahead. Sunlight, faint but unmistakable. The world of the living approaches. Hope grows. Yet hope often travels beside fear. The closer Orpheus comes to success, the more fragile success feels. What if something has gone wrong? What if Eurydice is no longer following? What if the rulers changed their minds? What if he misunderstood? The questions multiply. The silence provides no answers. Ancient audiences likely recognize the trap immediately. Fear seeks certainty. The condition requires faith. These forces oppose one another. You emerge into a broad cavern where pale daylight filters through cracks in the rock above. The air smells different now, fresh, alive. The scent of pine and distant sea wind reaches into the passage. Freedom feels close, very close. The ascent is nearly complete, and that is when it happens. The moment that echoes across centuries. The moment every listener anticipates. Orpheus hesitates, only briefly. The hesitation itself feels human, entirely human. The Greeks did not portray him as weak. They portrayed him as mortal, a mortal standing between love and uncertainty, a mortal struggling against fear, a mortal doing what countless others might do. He turns. The glance lasts only an instant, a single moment, a single look. Yet myths often transform moments into destinies. You see Eurydice behind him. She is there. She has been there all along, close enough to reach, close enough to touch. The tragedy arrives not because she failed. The tragedy arrives because she succeeded. The condition was nearly fulfilled. Nearly. Ancient storytellers understood the power of that word. Nearly. The space between triumph and loss can be impossibly small. Their eyes meet. For one brief instant, the image remains among the most haunting in all mythology. Recognition, relief, love. Then, separation. The rules of the underworld reassert themselves. Eurydice begins to fade, not violently, not dramatically, gently, like mist dissolving at sunrise, like a dream disappearing upon waking. The Greeks often preferred melancholy to spectacle. The sadness feels deeper because it remains quiet. You watch as she vanishes. The silence returns. The road stands empty. The opportunity is gone. Some ancient versions describe final words. Others preserve only silence. Another interpretation survives in later traditions, yet all agree upon the outcome. The dead return to the dead. The living continue alone. The tragedy is complete. Orpheus stands motionless. The sunlight ahead now feels distant despite its nearness. The world above waits, yet victory has become loss. Once again, a callback echoes through the entire journey. The warning spoken near the beginning. Do not mistake the road below for a road without consequences. The warning proves true, not because the underworld is cruel, because certain boundaries remain real. The Greeks often emphasized limits. Mortals possess extraordinary abilities. They can love, create, remember, dream, yet some limits endure. Death remains among them. The story does not end entirely in despair. Its deeper meaning lies elsewhere. The music of Orpheus reached the rulers of the dead. His love altered the impossible. His journey revealed the power of art and devotion, even in failure. Something meaningful survives. The Greeks admired such complexity. A story could be tragic and beautiful simultaneously. Life often feels the same, far below. The kingdom of Hades continues unchanged. The rivers flow, the judges watch. The king and queen rule, and somewhere within that eternal realm remains Eurydice, a memory preserved through song. A loss transformed into myth. A reminder that some journeys change the world, even when they do not achieve their goal. The sunlight beyond the cave entrance grows brighter, yet the shadows of the underworld linger, and another tale soon waits within them. A tale of heroes whose ambition will carry them where even Orpheus feared to tread. The memory of Orpheus lingers in the air as you leave the road of the fatal glance behind. The underworld seems quieter than before. The rivers continue their endless journeys through shadow. The blue flames burn steadily within distant halls, somewhere beyond sight. Hades and Persephone remain upon their thrones. The kingdom endures. It always endures. That permanence stands at the center of every story told about this place. Mortals arrive. Heroes descend. Dreamers challenge fate. Yet the underworld remains. Unchanged by their hopes, unchanged by their fears. The Greeks often found comfort and unease in that idea simultaneously. Some things survive every generation. Some boundaries cannot be erased. Tonight's story explores exactly that lesson. You rise once more toward the world above. The stars shine over ancient Greece. Moonlight washes across mountains and valleys. The scent of olive trees drifts through the night air, far away. Wolves call from forested hills. The world feels alive, dangerously alive. For among the heroes walking beneath these stars are two men whose confidence borders upon recklessness. Theseus, Pirithous. Their names were already famous throughout Greece. Theseus, especially, stood among the greatest heroes of his age. Slayer of the Minotaur, defender of Athens, a figure celebrated in countless stories. Pirithous, king of the Lapiths, shared a similar reputation. Brave, strong, determined, the two men became close companions. The Greeks admired deep friendships between heroes. Loyalty mattered. Shared adventures mattered. Trust mattered. Yet friendship could also encourage dangerous decisions. One brave man may hesitate. Two brave men sometimes convince each other that hesitation is unnecessary. The seeds of tragedy often grow in such soil. You walk beside a mountain road where the two heroes travel beneath moonlight. Their conversation drifts through the cool night air. They speak of glory, adventure, future deeds. The confidence of successful heroes surrounds them. Neither man doubts his abilities. Neither man expects limits to apply. The Greeks recognized this pattern well. Success can create a subtle illusion. The belief that past victories guarantee future ones. The belief that destiny favors you. The belief that ordinary rules no longer matter. Mythology frequently warns against such assumptions. A small omen appears. An owl rises suddenly from a nearby cypress tree. Its wings cut silently through the darkness. The bird vanishes into the night. Neither hero notices, yet ancient audiences likely would have. Warnings often appear before disastrous choices, not to prevent them, to reveal their significance. The conversation turns toward marriage, toward worthy partners, toward ambitious desires. At first, the discussion seems harmless. Then it becomes extraordinary. The heroes decide that ordinary marriages will not satisfy them. Only daughters of Zeus seem worthy. Already the plan sounds dangerous. Already ambition begins stretching beyond wisdom. Yet the decision grows even more reckless. Different traditions preserve slightly different details, but the central idea remains. Pirithous becomes determined to pursue Persephone herself, the queen of the Underworld, wife of Hades, ruler of the dead. The very suggestion reveals astonishing confidence, or astonishing foolishness, perhaps both. The Greeks often blurred the line between courage and arrogance. The distinction mattered deeply. A hero must be bold, but excessive boldness becomes hubris, and hubris invites disaster. You continue following the companions. The journey carries them across forests, valleys, and rocky hills. Eventually, their path leads toward the entrances of the underworld. The same shadowed roads you have traveled many times. The same boundaries crossed by Orpheus. The same kingdom governed by Hades and Persephone. Yet unlike Orpheus, these heroes do not descend motivated by love. They descend motivated by ambition. The contrast is important. Ancient storytellers rarely placed journeys side by side accidentally. Orpheus sought reunion. Theseus and Pirithous seek possession. The difference shapes everything that follows. The descent begins. Mist gathers around their feet. Torchlight flickers against cavern walls. The scent of damp stone fills the air. The familiar atmosphere returns. The kingdom of the dead waits below. As always, patient, silent, unmoved. You pass the rivers once more. Charon ferries the heroes across dark waters. The crossing feels less solemn this time. The companions remain confident. Perhaps too confident. The warning signs accumulate, yet they continue forward. A callback echoes from the earliest sections of your journey. Fear destroyed Cronus, yet excessive confidence may prove equally dangerous. The Greeks often viewed virtue as balance. Too much fear corrupts. Too little fear corrupts as well. Wisdom lies between extremes. The heroes move far beyond that middle ground. Eventually, they arrive within the throne hall. Blue flames illuminate polished stone. The rulers of the underworld sit upon their thrones. King and queen, Hades and Persephone. The atmosphere feels calm, controlled, ancient. The heroes announce their purpose, and suddenly the silence deepens. The request itself feels astonishing. To seek Persephone within her own kingdom, before her husband, before the ruler of the dead. The Greeks likely understood the scene immediately. The heroes have crossed an invisible line, not merely a physical boundary. A moral one, an existential one. Some traditions describe Hades responding with remarkable restraint. Others emphasize subtle divine judgment. Either way, no dramatic confrontation occurs. No thunderbolts fall. No battle erupts. Instead, the heroes are invited to sit. The gesture seems harmless, perhaps even hospitable, yet appearances deceive. They sit upon what later traditions often call the chair of forgetfulness, or a similarly enchanted seat. The details vary. The outcome does not. The heroes cannot rise. The realization arrives gradually, then completely. The confidence vanishes. The trap has closed. Ancient audiences appreciated such poetic consequences. The punishment reflects the offense. The men who presumed too much become powerless. The men who ignored limits discover them. The men who sought to discover what it means to lose freedom. The lesson feels unmistakable. Time passes. How much time remains uncertain? Days, months, years. The myths rarely specify. The heroes remain trapped within the kingdom they underestimated. One of them will never leave. Pirithous remains. His fate becomes permanent. The exact reasons vary among traditions, yet most accounts agree. His ambition carries consequences he cannot escape. Theseus eventually receives help, but that rescue belongs to another story, a story already approaching. For somewhere in Greece walks another hero, stronger than any mortal, a figure whose name echoes across mythology, Heracles. And unlike Theseus and Pirithous, he will enter the underworld not through reckless ambition, but through duty, through one final labor. The blue flames flicker softly across the throne hall. The rulers remain calm. The kingdom remains unchanged. And once again, the underworld teaches its lesson. Some boundaries exist for a reason. Some warnings deserve attention. Some ambitions travel too far. The heroes have learned this truth. Soon another hero will test it. The lesson of the trapped heroes lingers in the darkness. As you leave the throne hall behind, the blue flames fade into shadow once more. The rivers continue flowing through the vast kingdom beneath the earth. The judges remain at their posts. Charon guides his endless crossings. The underworld endures, patient, unchanging, ancient. Yet another visitor is approaching. Not a musician seeking lost love, not heroes driven by reckless ambition. A different kind of traveler, one whose name became known throughout the Greek world. Heracles, the greatest hero of Greek mythology. You rise briefly toward the surface world. Morning light spreads across mountains and valleys. The scent of pine fills the air. Sunlight glimmers upon distant rivers. The contrast between life and death feels especially strong now. For Heracles belongs entirely to the world of the living. Strength, action, movement, vitality. Everything about him seems opposed to the stillness of the underworld. And yet destiny is leading him there. The Greeks loved such contrasts. Opposites reveal one another. The strongest hero eventually confronts the kingdom of death. The symbolism feels almost inevitable. You walk beside Heracles as he travels through rugged countryside. The earth crunches beneath his sandals. A cool breeze moves across rocky hills, far away. Shepherds guide their flocks across green slopes. The hero appears calm, yet much lies behind that calmness. Ancient audiences knew Heracles not merely as a warrior, but as a tragic figure. His life contained triumphs, but also suffering, mistakes, loss. The famous labors themselves emerged from hardship and punishment. Strength alone never protected him from pain. The Greeks often portrayed their greatest heroes this way. Power and vulnerability existing together. The final labor approaches. Different traditions count and describe the labors slightly differently. Yet one task remains among the most famous. Heracles must descend into the underworld. He must confront Cerberus, and he must return with the great hound. The challenge sounds impossible. Perhaps that is the point. The final labor must test more than physical strength. It must test courage itself. You arrive at a lonely sanctuary near the edge of a mountain. Sacred fires burn quietly before stone altars. The scent of incense drifts through the air. Ancient priests move through the shadows. Some researchers believe stories connected to this labor may preserve echoes of real religious rituals involving symbolic journeys toward death and rebirth. Others remain cautious about such interpretations. The evidence remains uncertain. The mystery survives, as so often in Greek mythology. Before the descent begins, an omen appears. Clouds gather briefly above the mountain. a single shaft of sunlight breaks through them. The light falls directly upon the sanctuary entrance. Then the clouds drift apart once more, a sign, or perhaps merely coincidence. The Greeks often allowed both possibilities. You begin descending. The familiar road returns, the same cypress trees, the same cold air, the same drifting mist, throughout your journey. These images have appeared again and again, a quiet callback, a reminder that all roads eventually lead toward the same destination, the kingdom of Hades. Yet Heracles walks differently than previous visitors. Orpheus carried sorrow. Theseus carried confidence. Heracles carries purpose. His task is clear. His path is clear. The underworld cannot be avoided. Therefore, it must be faced. The Greeks admired this attitude deeply. Courage did not mean denying fear. It meant continuing despite it. The caverns open before you. Torchlight flickers across black stone. The scent of damp earth rises from below. Far ahead, the sound of rivers echoes through darkness. The kingdom of the dead waits. You cross the familiar boundaries. The rivers, the shore, the pathways of souls. Ancient listeners would have recognized these places immediately. By now they have become almost familiar. The geography of death itself. Yet familiarity does not diminish their mystery. The underworld still feels vast, still feels unknowable, still feels eternal. Eventually you reach the throne hall. Blue flames illuminate the chamber. Hades and Persephone sit upon their thrones. The rulers of the dead watch the approaching hero. What follows is fascinating. Many myths portray confrontations through violence. This story often emphasizes something different. Respect. Heracles does not attempt to overthrow Hades. Hades does not seek unnecessary conflict. The strongest mortal and the ruler of the dead meet as figures who understand responsibility. Different traditions preserve different details. Some describe brief conflict, others emphasize negotiation. Yet a common theme emerges. Heracles receives permission. The task may proceed, provided certain conditions are respected. The moment reveals something important about Hades. Throughout your journey, he has rarely acted out of cruelty. He governs. He enforces boundaries. He preserves order. This encounter reinforces that image. The king of the dead is not chaos. He is structure. The hero continues deeper into the kingdom. Soon the great hound appears. Cerberus, guardian of the dead. 3 heads watching the boundaries between worlds. Massive paws resting upon ancient stone. The creature remains as formidable as ever. Yet Heracles approaches without weapons. Ancient traditions often emphasize this detail. Strength alone. No sword, no spear, no trickery. The labor requires direct confrontation. The struggle begins. The imagery is dramatic. The hero wrestling the guardian of death itself. Yet beneath the spectacle lies symbolism. Heracles is not destroying Cerberus. He is mastering fear, facing mortality, confronting the boundary every human being eventually encounters. The Greeks loved stories operating on multiple levels, adventure and meaning intertwined. Eventually the labor succeeds. Cerberus is subdued. The impossible has been accomplished. The hero leads the hound toward the world above. Yet even now, respect remains. The guardian is not slain. The kingdom is not conquered. The natural order survives intact. Cerberus will return. Hades will continue ruling. Death itself remains undefeated. This distinction matters enormously. No hero truly conquers death in Greek mythology. At best, they visit its kingdom. They learn from it. Then they leave. The underworld always remains. You watch as Heracles begins the ascent. The blue flames fade behind him. The rivers continue flowing. The throne hall grows distant. The labor is complete. Another mortal has entered the kingdom of Hades and returned. Yet the kingdom itself remains unchanged. Patient, eternal, waiting, far above. Sunlight shines across Greece. Harvests rise and fall. Cities flourish and decline. Generations are born and pass away, but beneath every mountain and field, the realm of Hades endures, and as your journey continues, you will soon discover that the stories of heroes are only part of its mystery. For beyond Cerberus and the famous visitors lies a deeper question. What did ordinary Greeks actually believe about this kingdom, and how did they honor the ruler waiting beneath the earth? The footsteps of Heracles fade into the distance. The hero has returned to the world above. The labor is complete. Sunlight once again shines upon the living. While deep beneath the earth, the kingdom of Hades continues its endless rhythm. Nothing essential has changed. The rivers still flow. The judges still watch. The ferryman still guides souls across dark waters. And Cerberus has returned to his post. You remain within the underworld. The blue flames flicker softly across cavern walls. Mist drifts through ancient corridors. The scent of stone and earth fills the still air. Somewhere ahead waits one of the most recognizable figures in all mythology. Not a king, not a god, not a hero. A guardian, Cerberus, the great hound of the dead. Ancient artists portrayed him in many different ways. Some images show 3 heads. Others include serpents coiled around his body. A few traditions describe even more terrifying features. The details vary. The role remains constant. Guardian of the boundary, keeper of the gate, watcher of the road between worlds. You follow a winding pathway deeper into the kingdom. The torchlight gradually fades. The shadows grow thicker. Ahead, a low growl echoes through the darkness. Not threatening, merely present. A reminder that some places remain protected. Then you see him. Cerberus rests upon a broad stone platform near a massive archway carved into the bedrock of the underworld. The creature is enormous. Muscular shoulders rise and fall with slow breaths. Eyes gleam in the darkness. The 3 heads survey the surrounding pathways, alert, patient, ancient. Yet despite his fearsome appearance, Cerberus performs a surprisingly simple task. He keeps the dead inside and the living outside. The Greeks often created monsters whose symbolism exceeded their physical description. Cerberus belongs firmly within that tradition. At first glance, he seems frightening. Upon reflection, he represents something universal. Finality. The reality that some journeys cannot easily be reversed. The same lesson appeared throughout the story of Orpheus. The same lesson shaped the fate of Eurydice. The same lesson haunted every traveler entering the underworld. Death marks a boundary. Cerberus stands upon that boundary. The symbolism feels profound. You sit upon a nearby stone and observe the guardian. The great hound remains calm. No rage, no frenzy, only vigilance. This detail matters. Ancient mythology often reveals character through behavior rather than explanation. Cerberus does not chase victims. He does not hunt souls. He simply watches. The Greeks frequently imagined cosmic order this way, not through constant violence, through maintenance, through responsibility, through guardianship. The monster becomes less a creature of terror and more a creature of duty. A familiar theme emerges. Hades governs through duty. Charon ferries through duty. The judges evaluate through duty. And Cerberus guards through duty. The entire kingdom functions because every figure fulfills a role. Order prevails. A small omen appears. One of the torch flames near the archway suddenly bends despite the still air. For a moment, the light resembles a distant star. Then it steadies once more. The meaning remains uncertain. Perhaps merely a flicker. Perhaps a sign. The underworld never fully explains itself. The mystery remains. Ancient listeners likely appreciated that uncertainty. The unknown often carries more power than certainty. You continue watching the guardian. The 3 heads occasionally turn in different directions. One watches the pathways leading inward. One watches the roads leading outward. The third gazes into darkness beyond ordinary sight. The imagery invites interpretation. Some researchers believe the 3 heads may have symbolized different dimensions of existence. Past, present, future. Others suggest they simply emphasize the creature's supernatural nature. Another interpretation survives in later traditions. No single explanation commands universal agreement. The ambiguity enriches the myth, like many powerful symbols. Cerberus remains open to reflection. The Greeks often embraced such openness. Not every image required a definitive meaning. Sometimes multiple truths could coexist nearby. Souls pass quietly along the pathways. The guardian pays them little attention. His concern lies elsewhere, not with ordinary movement within the kingdom, with the boundaries themselves. The distinction feels important. The Greeks lived within a world filled with boundaries, city and wilderness, sea and shore, sacred and ordinary, life and death. Boundaries organized experience. They created structure. Cerberus embodies perhaps the greatest boundary of all, the separation between mortality and what follows. You recall the earlier stories. Orpheus, Theseus, Heracles. Each encountered the guardian in different ways. Each approached the boundary differently. Orpheus crossed through music, Theseus through ambition, Heracles through duty. The outcomes varied dramatically. Yet Cerberus remained constant. The boundary itself never changed. Only the travelers changed. The callback highlights one of the central themes running through your journey. The underworld does not merely reveal what lies beyond death. It reveals character. Every visitor exposes something about themselves. Fear, love, arrogance, courage. The kingdom acts almost like a mirror. The Greeks often found wisdom in such reflections, as the torchlight dances across the cavern walls. Another thought emerges. Why does the guardian appear as a dog? The question fascinated ancient audiences as well. Dogs occupied a unique place in Greek life. They protected homes, guarded livestock, accompanied travelers, remained loyal. A guardian dog would have felt familiar, comforting even. The myth transforms that familiar figure into something cosmic. Cerberus becomes the ultimate watchdog, not of a house, of mortality itself. The symbolism feels elegant. A recognizable creature elevated into legend, far above, unseen beyond mountains and earth. Evening settles across Greece. Families gather around hearth fires. Merchants close their shops. Sailors secure their vessels in quiet harbors. Life continues. Yet beneath every village and city waits the same destination, the same road, the same boundary, and the same guardian. The thought might sound melancholy, yet the Greeks often approached mortality with remarkable practicality. Death belonged to existence. Therefore, it deserved acknowledgement, not denial. Cerberus embodies that acknowledgement. The boundary exists. The guardian remains. The journey eventually comes for all. Yet there is peace within that certainty. The peace of order. The peace of understanding one's place within a larger pattern. The blue flames continue burning. The mist drifts softly through the corridors. The guardian settles once more beside the gate. Patient, watchful, eternal. And as you prepare to leave him behind, another story begins stirring within the deeper regions of the underworld. A story not about heroes, not about kings, but about punishment, about pride, about a man who believed he could outwit death itself. His name was Sisyphus, and his fate would become one of the most enduring symbols in all of mythology. The guardian settles into silence once more. Cerberus remains beside the gate, watching the boundary between worlds with tireless patience. The blue flames continue their steady glow. The rivers move through the darkness. The kingdom of Hades endures exactly as it always has. Yet not every soul within this realm arrived peacefully. Some came carrying pride, some carried arrogance, and a few believed themselves clever enough to outwit the very laws governing life and death. Among them, one figure became legendary, Sisyphus. You leave the great gate behind and travel deeper into the shadowed regions of the underworld. The pathways grow rougher here. The air feels heavier. The torchlight grows dim. The atmosphere changes subtly, as though the kingdom itself wishes to remind visitors that actions carry consequences. Ahead, distant echoes drift through the darkness, stone scraping against stone, again and again and again. The sound never seems to stop. The Greeks often used repetitive imagery to symbolize deeper truths. No story demonstrates this more clearly than the fate of Sisyphus. You emerge into a barren landscape. The ground rises steeply toward a rocky hill. Mist clings to the stones. The air feels cool against your skin. The scent of dust and earth hangs motionless in the stillness. And there, upon the slope, stands Sisyphus. His form appears weary, yet determined. Before him rests an enormous boulder, ancient, heavy, unyielding. Slowly he pushes it upward. Step by step, stone grinds against rock, muscles strain. The summit draws near. Then, just before success, the boulder slips. It rolls downward, all the way to the bottom. The task begins again. The image remains one of the most famous scenes in mythology, perhaps because it feels strangely familiar. Not literally, symbolically. Every generation recognizes something of itself within the story. Ancient audiences certainly did. You watch the boulder thunder back down the hill. The sound echoes through the underworld. Sisyphus pauses only briefly, then begins pushing once more. The cycle continues, endlessly. The Greeks often created punishments that reflected the nature of the crime. The punishment became a lesson, a mirror, a symbolic consequence. To understand the hill, you must understand the man. You begin walking through memories preserved by myth far above. In the world of sunlight stood the city of Corinth. Ancient walls overlooked the sea. Harbors welcomed merchants from distant lands. Ships carried goods across blue waters. The scent of olive oil and cedar drifted through busy marketplaces. There ruled Sisyphus, king of Corinth. Clever, resourceful, ambitious. Ancient traditions consistently describe him as extraordinarily intelligent. His mind worked quickly. His plans often succeeded. The Greeks admired intelligence deeply, yet they also recognized a danger. Wisdom and cunning are not always the same thing. A person may possess brilliance without possessing judgment. Sisyphus often crossed that line. You walk through a bustling marketplace imagined by generations of storytellers. Merchants call from shaded stalls. The smell of fresh bread fills the air. Bronze glitters beneath sunlight. Voices echo between stone buildings. At the center stands the king, confident, smiling, always calculating. Different myths preserve different examples of his cleverness. Yet one trait remains constant. He enjoys outsmarting others, especially powerful others. Eventually, that confidence expands into something larger. The belief that he can outsmart fate itself. The Greeks frequently warned against such thinking. The universe contains mysteries beyond human control. To forget this invites disaster. A prophecy appears, or perhaps a warning. Ancient versions vary. Yet several traditions suggest signs emerged before Sisyphus's downfall. Dreams, divine messages, subtle reminders of mortality. The king ignores them. Confidence blinds him. The earlier lesson returns. Too much fear can corrupt. Too little fear can corrupt as well. Balance remains wisdom. Sisyphus abandons balance. His most famous act concerns death itself. Ancient sources preserve several versions of the story. In one tradition, he deceives Thanatos, the personification of death. Through trickery, he manages to imprison him. The consequences become immediate. People stop dying. At first, the situation might seem desirable, yet chaos quickly follows. The natural order begins unraveling. The Greeks understood something important here. Even death serves a purpose, without endings. Balance collapses. The same theme has echoed throughout your journey. Hades governs order. Charon preserves order. Cerberus protects order. Sisyphus challenges order. The contrast feels deliberate. Eventually, the deception fails. It always does. Thanatos is released. The natural cycle resumes. Yet Sisyphus remains unwilling to accept limits. Another story tells of instructions given to his wife. When he dies, she must neglect certain funeral rites. The plan allows him another opportunity for trickery. Once in the underworld, he complains, claims improper treatment, requests temporary return, promises to come back afterward. Of course, he does not intend to return. The Greeks likely smiled knowingly at this part of the tale. The king remains consistent, always plotting, always maneuvering, always believing himself the cleverest figure in the room. For a time, the scheme succeeds. He returns to the world above. Sunlight warms his face once more. Sea breezes move through Corinth. Life resumes, yet destiny waits patiently. The underworld always waits patiently. No deception lasts forever. Eventually, Sisyphus is brought back, this time permanently. And now, the punishment begins. You return your attention to the rocky hill. The king continues pushing. The boulder rises, slips, falls. The cycle repeats. Modern readers often interpret the myth through philosophical lenses. Ancient audiences likely focused more upon the moral lesson. The punishment reflects the crime. The man who believed he could endlessly manipulate reality receives endless labor. The man who refused limits encounters one he cannot overcome. The symbolism remains elegant, simple, powerful, yet another mystery lingers. Did the Greeks view Sisyphus purely as a villain? Not necessarily. Some traditions almost admire his determination, his refusal to surrender, his relentless effort. Historians continue debating these nuances. Another interpretation always survives. The myth resists becoming entirely simple. That complexity helps explain its longevity. You watch the boulder roll downward once more. The sound fades into the distance. A strange feeling emerges. Not satisfaction, not pity, something between them. The Greeks often excelled at creating stories that invited reflection rather than easy judgment. Sisyphus failed, yet he remains memorable. Punished, yet strangely enduring. The hill, the stone, and the endless climb become symbols larger than the man himself. The blue flames of the underworld flicker far away. The kingdom remains calm. The lesson remains clear. Cleverness has limits. Mortality has limits. Human power has limits. And wisdom begins when those limits are understood. As you leave the rocky slope behind, another figure waits deeper within the kingdom. Another soul whose punishment became legendary. Another warning preserved through myth. His name is Tantalus, and his story concerns not effort, but desire. The sound of the rolling boulder slowly fades away. Behind you, Sisyphus continues his endless climb. The stone rises, the stone falls. The cycle repeats beneath the dim light of the underworld. Yet deeper within the kingdom lies another lesson, another warning, another story the Greeks told for centuries beside sacred fires and household hearths. You continue along a rough pathway winding through shadowed caverns. The air feels still. The scent of stone lingers around you. Blue flames flicker from distant alcoves carved into the rock. The underworld grows quieter here, more isolated, as though certain regions are reserved for reflection. Ahead, the landscape begins to change. A strange pool appears among the rocks. The water looks clear and inviting. Nearby stand fruit trees, heavy with ripe branches, golden apples, dark figs, pomegranates glowing like polished jewels. The scene seems beautiful, peaceful, even. Yet something feels wrong. A subtle unease hangs in the air. The Greeks often created such contrasts. Beauty, concealing suffering. Abundance, concealing deprivation. The contradiction itself becomes part of the lesson. At the center of the pool stands Tantalus. Ancient traditions describe him as a king favored by the gods, a man granted extraordinary privileges, unlike ordinary mortals. He shared in divine company. He attended sacred feasts. He enjoyed honors few humans could imagine. At first glance, his life seems enviable. Yet mythology frequently warns that privilege can become a test, and not everyone passes. You approach the water's edge. Tantalus stands waist-deep within the pool. His face appears weary. The years have worn away every trace of pride. Above him, fruit hangs from low branches, close enough to reach. The water surrounds him, close enough to drink. Yet every attempt fails. When he bends to drink, the water recedes. When he reaches for fruit, the branches rise beyond his grasp. Again and again and again. The punishment remains one of the most famous in mythology. So famous that his name eventually inspired a modern word. To be tantalized, to see something desirable forever beyond reach. The Greeks excelled at symbolic punishments, and few symbols feel more universal than this one. Desire itself becomes the prison. You sit beside the pool and observe. The water ripples softly. The fruit sways gently. The scene remains strangely calm, unlike Sisyphus's labor. No violent effort appears here. Only longing, only frustration, only absence. The punishment feels quieter, perhaps even sadder. To understand why, you must understand the man. You journey backward through memory once more, far above the underworld, beneath bright Mediterranean skies. Tantalus ruled a prosperous kingdom. The details vary across traditions. Some place his realm in Lydia, others preserve different locations. Historians continue debating how various local legends became woven together. Yet all versions agree on one point. Tantalus enjoyed unusual closeness with the gods. He was trusted, honored, welcomed. The Greeks often treated hospitality as sacred. To share food, conversation, and companionship created obligations. Trust mattered. Respect mattered. Violating that trust carried serious consequences. The story of Tantalus revolves around exactly such a violation. Different traditions preserve different offenses. Some describe theft from divine tables. Others tell of sacred secrets revealed to mortals. The most disturbing version involves a feast and an act of shocking betrayal. Ancient sources disagree on certain details, yet the common theme remains. Tantalus abuses divine trust. The lesson mattered deeply to Greek audiences. Gifts create responsibilities. Privilege creates obligations. The higher one's position, the greater the expectation of wisdom. Tantalus fails that test spectacularly. A warning appears within the story. Several traditions describe signs ignored before disaster arrives. Dreams, unsettling omens, moments of hesitation. The details vary. The pattern remains familiar throughout your journey. Warnings have appeared repeatedly. Cronus ignored warnings. Theseus ignored warnings. Sisyphus ignored warnings. Now Tantalus joins them. The Greeks rarely portrayed catastrophe as completely random. Often small opportunities for reflection existed beforehand. The tragedy lies partly in refusing them. You return your attention to the pool. The punishment now reveals its deeper meaning. At first glance, it concerns hunger and thirst. Yet beneath that surface lies something more profound. Desire without satisfaction, wanting without fulfillment. The Greeks understood that human beings often suffer not only from lacking things, they suffer from endless craving. The desire for more wealth, more power, more status, more certainty. The list never ends. Tantalus embodies that condition. The fruit remains visible. The water remains visible. Fulfillment always seems possible, yet never arrives. The symbolism feels timeless. A gentle omen stirs the air. One ripe pomegranate briefly falls from a branch. For a moment it seems destined to reach Tantalus. Then the fruit vanishes before touching the ground. The image recalls the pomegranate of Persephone, a callback linking desire and consequence. One fruit created connection. Another fruit remains forever inaccessible. The contrast feels deliberate. Ancient myths often converse with one another in subtle ways. You continue reflecting beside the pool. Modern readers sometimes interpret Tantalus psychologically. Ancient audiences likely focused more upon morality and balance. Yet both perspectives reveal something important. The story warns against excess, against greed, against believing that privilege exempts one from responsibility. The Greeks returned to these themes repeatedly because they recognized them everywhere. In kings, in cities, in themselves. The lesson remains relevant precisely because it concerns ordinary human impulses. Everyone desires. The question becomes whether desire remains balanced, or whether it begins controlling the person who feels it. The pool grows still once more. Tantalus reaches, fails, reaches again. The cycle continues. No anger remains, only inevitability. The underworld often feels this way, not chaotic, not arbitrary. Consequences unfolding with relentless calm, far away. The rivers continue flowing. The judges continue their work. Hades and Persephone continue ruling. The kingdom remains ordered, structured, patient. A place where stories become lessons, and lessons become symbols as you rise from the water's edge. Another path appears ahead. The shadows deepen. The blue flames flicker against distant stone. Beyond the next turning waits another figure, another king, another warning. His punishment does not involve a hill or a pool. It involves a wheel turning endlessly through the darkness of eternity. His name is Ixion, and his story reveals what happens when gratitude gives way to arrogance. The waters of Tantalus disappear behind you. The quiet pool remains in the darkness, surrounded by unreachable fruit and endless longing. The lesson lingers in your thoughts as you continue deeper into the kingdom of Hades. Desire, greed, the danger of forgetting limits. Again and again, the underworld transforms human mistakes into symbols. The Greeks understood that stories become memorable when lessons take visible form. A rolling stone, a receding pool. And now, another image awaits. A wheel. You follow a narrow path through caverns illuminated by pale blue fire. The scent of stone remains constant. The air feels cool and motionless, far away. A strange sound echoes through the darkness. Not water, not footsteps, something rotating, a rhythmic creaking, ancient, endless. The sound repeats again and again. You move toward it. The passage opens into a vast chamber whose ceiling disappears into shadow. Mist drifts through the cavern like pale smoke. At the center turns an enormous wheel. Its spokes glow faintly. Its motion never stops. Around and around, without pause, without rest. Bound to the wheel is Ixion, His story is less famous today than those of Sisyphus or Tantalus. Yet ancient Greeks knew it well. For them, Ixion represented one of the most dangerous failures possible. The failure of gratitude. The failure of respect. The failure to recognize blessings. You watch the wheel turn slowly through the darkness. The image feels strangely hypnotic. Not violent, not chaotic. Simply relentless, like time itself, like consequence itself. The Greeks often preferred punishments that reflected inner flaws rather than external suffering. The wheel accomplishes exactly that, to understand why. You must once again travel backward through memory, far above the underworld. Under bright skies and warm sunlight, Ixion ruled as a king. His early life already carried shadows. Ancient traditions describe acts of violence and betrayal. The details vary among sources. Some versions emphasize political conflict, others focus upon personal crimes. Historians continue debating how these stories evolved. Yet most agree that Ixion developed a reputation for troubling behavior, a reputation that should have isolated him. Yet something extraordinary happened. The gods showed mercy. Zeus himself offered forgiveness. The significance of this gesture cannot be overstated. The king of the gods rarely extended such favor lightly. Mercy creates obligation. Kindness creates responsibility. The Greeks valued reciprocity deeply. A gift deserved acknowledgement. Hospitality deserved respect. To ignore these principles threatened the very foundations of society. Ixion received a second chance, and then squandered it. You walk through a memory of Olympus. Golden halls gleam beneath eternal light. Marble columns rise toward brilliant skies. The scent of nectar and sacred incense fills the air. The atmosphere radiates harmony, order, divine generosity. Ixion has been welcomed here, a mortal guest among immortals. Few honors could exceed it. Yet instead of gratitude, arrogance begins growing. The pattern should feel familiar by now. Throughout your journey, many figures have crossed the same line. Cronus feared losing power. Theseus presumed too much. Sisyphus trusted his cleverness. Tantalus abused privilege. Ixion now joins their company. The details differ. The lesson remains consistent. Ancient myths often warn that blessings become dangerous when taken for granted. Different traditions describe Ixion becoming obsessed with Hera, queen of the gods. His desire grows. His judgment weakens. His gratitude vanishes. What began as mercy becomes entitlement. What began as honor becomes presumption. The Greeks recognized this transformation immediately, perhaps because it remained so recognizable. Human beings often adapt quickly to good fortune. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. The gift becomes expectation. The blessing becomes something assumed. Ixion embodies that danger. A warning appears. Several ancient traditions describe signs before his downfall: uneasy dreams, divine hints, moments of hesitation. The details vary, yet the pattern returns once more. Warnings rarely arrive, only once. The universe whispers before it shouts. Ixion ignores every whisper. The consequence follows. You return to the cavern of the wheel. The great circle continues turning through the darkness. Its movement feels symbolic in countless ways. The Greeks loved circular imagery. Seasons turn. Stars circle overhead. Generations rise and fall. History repeats. The wheel captures all these ideas simultaneously. Some ancient interpretations viewed the punishment as representing uncontrolled desire. Others emphasized ingratitude. Still others connected it to cosmic order itself. Historians continue debating these possibilities. No single explanation commands complete agreement. The ambiguity enriches the story, like many enduring myths. It remains open to reflection. You sit upon a stone ledge and watch the wheel turn. The motion never changes. No progress occurs. No destination approaches. The cycle itself becomes the punishment. A callback echoes from the story of Sisyphus. The boulder rolled endlessly. The wheel turns endlessly. The Greeks repeatedly used repetition to symbolize spiritual failure. The soul trapped by its own flaws. The person unable to move beyond destructive patterns. The imagery feels surprisingly modern. Human beings still struggle with recurring mistakes, recurring desires, recurring fears. The ancient myth remains relevant because the pattern remains familiar. A small omen appears. One of the blue flames surrounding the chamber briefly changes color. For an instant, it glows gold, then blue again. The meaning remains unclear. Perhaps memory, perhaps warning, perhaps nothing at all. The uncertainty remains part of the atmosphere. The underworld never fully explains itself. Its mysteries persist. You reflect upon the three great punishments encountered so far. Sisyphus, Tantalus, Ixion. Effort without completion. Desire without satisfaction. Motion without progress. Each punishment reflects a different aspect of imbalance. The Greeks often believed virtue involved moderation, balance, self-knowledge. The punished souls reveal what happens when those qualities disappear. The lessons feel stern, yet not entirely hopeless. Ancient audiences did not merely hear these stories as warnings. They heard them as invitations to live differently, to recognize limits, to appreciate blessings, to cultivate wisdom. The wheel continues turning. The cavern remains silent except for its endless motion. Far beyond these shadowed regions, the broader kingdom of Hades carries on. The rivers flow. The judges watch. The queen and king remain upon their thrones. And soon your journey will move beyond famous punishments and heroic visitors. For another mystery awaits. A mystery connected not to myth alone, but to history, to real temples, real worshippers, real rituals. How did ancient Greeks actually honor Hades? And what did ordinary people believe about the ruler waiting beneath the earth? The answers lie beyond the wheel, beyond the stories, in the sacred traditions of Greece itself. The wheel continues turning behind you. Its slow motion fades into the distance as you leave the shadowed regions of punishment and return toward the broader kingdom of the dead. The blue flames once again illuminate vast halls. The rivers continue their endless journeys through darkness. For many sections, you have traveled through myth, through heroes, through gods, through symbols. Now your journey enters a different landscape, not the landscape of legend, the landscape of belief. For the ancient Greeks did not encounter Hades only through stories. They encountered him through ritual, through prayer, through sacred traditions woven into everyday life. The distinction matters. A myth reveals what people imagined. A ritual reveals what people practiced. And sometimes the two overlap in fascinating ways. You rise from the underworld once more toward the living world. Morning sunlight spreads across Greece. White temples gleam upon distant hills. Ships drift through blue harbors. The scent of olive oil and sea wind fills the air. Life continues beneath a sky watched by the Olympians. Yet beneath every city lies the hidden kingdom of Hades. The awareness never completely disappears. Death remains part of existence. Therefore, its ruler remains important. Many modern listeners are surprised to learn that Hades was not among the most widely worshipped Greek gods. Ancient evidence suggests his cult remained relatively limited compared to figures such as Zeus, Athena, Apollo, or Demeter. The reason seems understandable. People respected Hades, but they rarely sought his attention. The Greeks often preferred not to invoke the ruler of the dead unnecessarily. Respect felt safer than familiarity. You walk through a bustling marketplace beneath the warm afternoon sun. Merchants sell pottery, wine, and woven cloth. Children run between stalls. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the air. Life surrounds you. Yet even here, reminders of mortality appear. Funeral processions occasionally pass through city streets. Family tombs stand beyond the walls. Ancestors remain part of communal memory. Death is never entirely absent. The Greeks lived with that reality. And because they lived with it, they developed ways of acknowledging the power of Hades. Not always openly, often quietly. A curious detail appears in many ancient sources. People sometimes avoided speaking the name Hades directly. Instead, they used respectful titles. The wealthy one, the receiver of many, the host of many guests. Such names reveal something important. Words carried power. Names carried power. To speak a divine name was not always a casual act. The Greeks often approached sacred language carefully, particularly when dealing with forces beyond human control. You continue toward a rural sanctuary hidden among hills and cypress trees. The scent of pine mingles with incense. Bird song echoes softly through the grove. The atmosphere feels peaceful, yet a certain solemnity remains. Archaeological discoveries suggest that shrines associated with underworld powers often occupied distinctive locations, near caves, near springs, near places where the boundary between worlds felt thin. The geography itself became meaningful. The landscape participated in belief. A small omen appears. As you enter the grove, a cool breeze moves through the cypress branches. The trees whisper softly overhead. Then the air becomes still again. A simple moment. Yet ancient visitors might have interpreted it as a sign. A reminder that sacred places remained alive with unseen presence. The Greeks frequently experienced nature through symbolic lenses. You approach a stone altar darkened by centuries of offerings, unlike the bright altars of Olympian worship. Rituals connected with underworld powers often possessed distinctive characteristics. Some ceremonies occurred at night. Some involved offerings poured directly into the earth. The symbolism feels clear. The gift travels downward, toward the realm below. Historians continue debating the exact details of many local practices. Regional traditions varied considerably. Another interpretation often survives beside the first. Yet a broad pattern emerges. The underworld inspired reverence, not celebration. Respect, not intimacy. The emotional tone differed from many other cults. You sit beside the altar and imagine generations of worshippers passing through the grove. Farmers seeking protection for their families. Parents mourning lost children. Travelers remembering ancestors. The concerns feel profoundly human. The rituals offered structure, meaning, connection. The Greeks often approached religion not as abstract theology, but as lived experience. Sacred actions mattered because life mattered. Death mattered. Memory mattered. A particularly fascinating aspect of Greek religion involved the mystery cults. These traditions promised deeper spiritual insight through initiation and ritual participation. Among the most famous stood the Eleusinian mysteries, closely connected to Demeter and Persephone, the very figures whose story transformed the seasons. You walk now along a sacred road leading toward Eleusis. The sun begins setting. Golden light washes across the landscape. Pilgrims move quietly along the path. The scent of dust and wild herbs rises beneath their feet. Ancient writers rarely reveal the secrets of these ceremonies. Participants protected them carefully. That silence remains one of history's great mysteries. Historians continue debating exactly what initiates experienced. The evidence remains incomplete. The uncertainty persists. Yet surviving testimony suggests the rites profoundly affected participants. Many emerged with a different perspective on death. Less fear, more hope. The connection feels significant. Persephone's descent and return provided a symbolic framework for understanding mortality. Life disappears. Life returns. The cycle continues. Some researchers believe this myth offered emotional comfort to initiates confronting human mortality. Another interpretation emphasizes agricultural symbolism. Both possibilities may contain truth. The beauty of ancient religion often lies in its layered meanings. A callback emerges from earlier sections. The pomegranate, the descent, the return. What began as myth becomes ritual. What began as story becomes spiritual reflection. The boundary between narrative and belief grows wonderfully blurred. As twilight deepens, torches begin appearing along the sacred road. Their flames flicker against the approaching darkness. The sight reminds you of the underworld itself. Blue flames in shadowed halls, torchlight beside sacred pathways. The imagery echoes across worlds. Perhaps intentionally, the Greeks excelled at connecting visible and invisible realities, above and below, life and death, memory and forgetting. The rulers of the underworld stand at the center of those connections, not merely as characters and stories, as presences within religious imagination. The stars emerge overhead. The pilgrims continue walking. The sacred road stretches onward. And another mystery waits ahead, a place where some ancient Greeks believed the dead themselves could be consulted, a place of underground chambers, whispered questions, and lingering uncertainty. The Necromanteion, one of the most mysterious sanctuaries in the ancient world. Night settles across the landscape. You leave the sacred road of Eleusis behind as the last torches fade into the distance. The air grows cooler. The sky above deepens into indigo. Stars begin to appear, one by one, like quiet witnesses to the world below. Somewhere far beyond the hills, waves strike a hidden coastline, and there, near the edge of Greece's western lands, A different kind of sanctuary is waiting. A place where the living once tried to speak with the dead. You travel slowly through rugged countryside. The terrain becomes wilder here. Fewer villages appear. Fewer travelers cross your path. Cypress trees stand like dark silhouettes against the horizon. Ancient traditions describe this region as liminal, a threshold, a borderland between worlds. And in such places, the Greeks believed the veil between life and death could thin. The Necromanteion, the oracle of the dead. Even its name carries weight, not a temple of gods above, but a sanctuary dedicated to communication with those beneath. You approach a low stone structure, partially carved into the earth. It does not rise dramatically like the marble temples of Olympus. Instead, it sinks downward, as though the building itself wishes to descend toward the kingdom below. The scent of damp soil and ancient stone fills the air. Torches burn at irregular intervals, casting shifting shadows along uneven walls. Archaeological evidence suggests that such sites likely combined ritual practice with symbolic descent experiences. Some scholars believe hallucinogenic herbs may have been used. Others emphasize psychological and ceremonial effects. Another interpretation suggests carefully designed architecture created the sensation of entering the underworld itself. The truth remains uncertain, and perhaps intentionally so. You walk through a narrow passageway. The temperature drops noticeably. The light grows dim. The air feels heavier. Each step carries you deeper beneath the earth. The sensation is unmistakable. A descent, even if only symbolic, even if only ritual. Ancient pilgrims likely felt the same shift. The world above slipping away. The world below approaching. At the center of the sanctuary lies a chamber surrounded by stone walls. The space is quiet, almost suffocating in its stillness. Water pools in shallow basins along the floor. The reflections of torchlight ripple gently across the surface. Priests once guided visitors through elaborate rituals here. Offerings were made, prayers spoken, questions asked, and then silence. In some accounts, participants believed they could hear voices emerging from the darkness, whispers, fragments, echoes of the dead. Historians continued to debate what truly occurred within such sanctuaries. Some suggest natural acoustics amplified sound in unusual ways. Others emphasize the psychological intensity of ritualized expectation. Another interpretation holds that belief itself shaped perception. The Greeks did not always separate physical experience from spiritual meaning. For them, both could coexist. You kneel beside the water basin. The surface is still, yet faint ripples appear without apparent cause. Perhaps it is only air movement. Perhaps it is something else. The uncertainty lingers. A soft breeze passes through the chamber. The torch flames flicker. For a brief moment, the reflections distort, and you imagine something beneath the surface. Not a figure, not clearly, only presence. The idea that the dead might still be reachable carried profound emotional significance. Not because it guaranteed answers, but because it suggested continuity, connection, the possibility that memory does not vanish entirely. You rise slowly and continue through the sanctuary. Deeper chambers open ahead. Some passages are narrow and winding. Others expand into larger halls, carved into bedrock. The architecture feels intentionally disorienting, as though designed to remove certainty, to guide the mind away from the familiar world, and toward something more ambiguous. At the deepest point lies a circular chamber. Stone benches line the walls. A central pit rests in the floor, dark, still, ancient. The air here feels especially heavy. Even breathing seems quieter. The Greeks often imagined the underworld as a place of voices, not always loud, not always clear, but present, always present. A priestly guide once would have stood here, offering instruction, leading invocation, inviting questions directed toward those who had passed beyond life. What did ancient people hope to gain from such experiences? Historians suggest many possibilities. Closure, guidance, reassurance, a sense that loved ones still existed somewhere beyond reach. The ritual did not necessarily promise clarity, but it offered connection. And connection often matters more than certainty. A small omen occurs. As you stand in the chamber, the torchlight suddenly dims, not extinguished, simply softened. The shadows deepen. For a moment, the space feels larger than before, or perhaps emptier. Then the light returns to normal. The moment passes, yet its impression remains. The boundary between worlds feels subtly closer here than anywhere else in your journey. Not broken, not crossed, but thinner. Ancient Greeks likely experienced such places with a mixture of awe and caution. Curiosity balanced by respect. The desire to know balanced by fear of what knowledge might bring. You think of Hades once more, the silent king governing this vast hidden realm. Not as a monster, not as an enemy, but as a necessary presence. Without him, the order of existence would collapse. Life would lose its boundary. Memory would lose its frame. Meaning itself might dissolve. The Greeks understood this paradox, and so they built sanctuaries not only to the bright gods of Olympus, but also to the unseen powers beneath. The Necromanteion represents that duality, light and darkness, knowledge and uncertainty, life and death in uneasy balance. You leave the deepest chamber and begin ascending toward the surface once more. The air gradually warms. The light slowly strengthens. The scent of earth becomes familiar again, above ground. The night sky stretches endlessly. The stars remain unchanged, silent, distant, constant. Yet your understanding of the world has shifted. For now you have seen how the Greeks not only imagined the underworld. They reached toward it, sought it, listened for it, and sometimes, in ritual and belief, felt its presence echo back, far beneath all of this. Hades continues his eternal rule. Persephone sits beside him. The rivers flow, the judges watch, and the dead continue their journey without end. But the story is not finished. For every myth carries not only gods and rituals, but meaning in the lives of ordinary people. How did they face death? How did they honor memory? And how did they live? Knowing that beneath every step they took, a kingdom waited in silence. The final descent of understanding is still ahead. The stone passage behind you finally opens to the night air. You step out of the Necromanteion and feel the world above again. The wind is cooler now. The stars seem sharper. The landscape stretches quietly under moonlight, as if holding its breath after what you have just witnessed. Yet the boundary has not disappeared. It simply feels closer, more real. The Greeks did not leave death behind when they left sacred sanctuaries. They carried it with them into daily life, into homes, into marketplaces, into fields where grain grew and harvests failed. Death was not an abstract idea. It was always nearby. You walk along a rural road bordered by low stone walls. Olive trees stand in rows, their leaves shimmering silver under the night sky. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. A lamp flickers in a farmhouse window. Life continues, and beneath it, the underworld remains for ordinary Greeks. Awareness of Hades was not constant fear. It was familiarity, a quiet presence, a certainty woven into everything. Birth and death were not separate ideas. They were parts of the same cycle. You pass a small family shrine beside the road. It is simple. A few stones, a worn offering bowl, perhaps a name carved into weathered marble. The scent of old oil lingers faintly in the air. Such places were common throughout Greece. Not grand temples, but intimate spaces. Places where families remembered those who had gone below. The Greeks believed the dead still existed in some form. Not always vividly, not always in a way the living could easily perceive, but present enough to be honored, remembered, addressed. Ancient households often performed small rituals for ancestors, offerings of food, pouring of wine upon the earth, quiet words spoken at dawn or dusk. Historians continued to debate how literally these practices were understood. Some suggest symbolic meaning, others emphasize genuine belief in ongoing presence. Another interpretation suggests both coexisted. The Greeks did not always separate symbol from reality as sharply as modern thinking might. You continue walking, far ahead. A village appears, its lights glowing softly in the darkness. Smoke rises from chimneys. The smell of wood fire drifts across the fields. Inside those homes, life unfolds in simple rhythms. Meals prepared, stories shared, children sleeping beside hearths. Yet even here, Hades is not absent. He is present in funeral customs, in burial rites, in the careful attention given to the dead. The Greeks treated funerals with deep seriousness. The body was prepared with care. Family members gathered. Laments were sung. The procession moved slowly through streets toward burial grounds outside the city walls. Archaeological evidence shows that grave goods varied widely depending on region and status. Sometimes pottery, sometimes coins, sometimes personal belongings. Each item carried meaning, a gesture toward the continuation, a bridge between worlds. You pause near a hillside cemetery. Rows of stone markers stand beneath moonlight. Some are simple, others bear inscriptions, names, lineages, short phrases of remembrance. The wind moves gently through the grass. The air feels still, not eerie, reflective. The Greeks did not imagine death as disappearance alone. They imagined it as transformation of presence. Memory became a form of survival. To be remembered was, in a sense, to remain. This idea appears repeatedly in their mythology. Heroes strive for kleos, lasting fame. Ordinary people seek remembrance within family and community. Even gods are preserved through stories. Everything depends upon memory, and memory depends upon the living. You think again of Lethe, the river of forgetting, and of Asphodel, where ordinary souls drift through pale existence. These images were never meant to be purely literal geography. They were emotional landscapes, ways of describing what it means to be remembered or forgotten. A soft omen appears. A single candle flickers in the cemetery wind. It does not go out. It steadies, then burns brighter for a moment before returning to normal. A simple event, yet in the logic of ancient imagination, even small movements of flame could carry meaning. The boundary between worlds was never entirely closed. You move on from the cemetery toward the village. Inside, the rhythm of life continues. A baker prepares dough for the morning. A fisherman repairs nets by lamplight. An elder sits quietly near a doorway, watching the night. Every life is ordinary, and yet every life is touched by the same destiny. The journey below, the kingdom of Hades, the crossing of rivers and judgment of souls. This awareness shaped Greek ethics in subtle ways. It encouraged moderation, respect, hospitality, care for others, because life was brief, and its end was certain. You remember earlier stories? Sisyphus pushing his stone, Tantalus reaching for fruit, Ixion bound to the wheel. These were not only punishments, they were reflections of human imbalance, warnings embedded in myth. The Greeks did not always separate morality from cosmology. The structure of the universe itself carried lessons as you leave the village behind. The road begins to slope upward toward its distant hills. The sky slowly brightens toward pre-dawn blue. Stars fade one by one. The world prepares for morning, yet beneath everything, the underworld remains unchanged. Hades still rules. Persephone still shares his throne. The rivers still flow, and the dead still arrive. What you have learned is not only where souls go, but how deeply that belief shaped daily life. In every offering, every burial, every whispered name, the kingdom below was present, not as a distant myth, but as a constant companion to existence. And now, as light begins to touch the horizon, one final question remains. Not about gods, not about punishment, but about meaning itself. What does it mean to live in a world where death is always near? And how did the Greeks transform that certainty into stories that still speak across thousands of years? The final answer lies in the way even silence becomes memory, and memory becomes eternity. The first light of dawn spreads across the horizon. You stand on a hillside overlooking the waking world of Greece. The night slowly dissolves behind you. Stars fade into pale blue sky. Valleys begin to glow with morning light. Olive trees catch the sun in their silver leaves. The world feels renewed, yet beneath that renewal, something ancient remains unchanged. The kingdom of Hades still exists below every step, but how people understood that kingdom was never fixed. It changed, it evolved, it adapted to time, culture, and philosophy. And so, as you continue your journey, you begin to see something important. Hades is not a single image. He is many, You walk along a ridge where wind moves through tall grass. The sound is soft, almost rhythmic. Birds begin to call from distant trees. A shepherd leads his flock across a far hillside. Life resumes its familiar pattern. Yet Greek thought about death never stayed static for long. In early poetic traditions, Hades appears as a distant but powerful ruler, a god associated with inevitability rather than emotion. His name itself often avoided, replaced with respectful titles. The receiver of many, the hidden one, the wealthy one. These names reveal something essential. Death was not simply destruction, it was accumulation. All souls eventually arrived. All lives eventually entered his domain. Nothing escaped. In that sense, Hades was not poor or barren. He was infinitely wealthy in what he possessed. Lives, memories, stories. You pause near an ancient roadside shrine. The stone is worn smooth by time. Offerings lie quietly at its base. A few dried flowers, a small bowl, a fragment of pottery. No grand statues, only presence over centuries. Hades was shaped not only by myth but by philosophy. Later, thinkers in Greece began to interpret him differently. Some saw him as necessary order, others as a natural force, still others as a metaphor for transformation. The underworld became less a literal geography and more a conceptual space, a way of understanding existence itself. Archaeological evidence from later periods suggests growing complexity in funerary inscriptions. Some emphasize peace, others continuity, others memory and honor, rarely pure fear. The image of Hades gradually shifts from distant ruler to cosmic administrator, to symbolic guardian of transition. You continue walking through a small village just beginning its day. Smoke rises from chimneys. Potters shape clay near open workshops. Children run through narrow streets. An ordinary world, yet everywhere. Traces of the underworld remain. Grave markers outside the walls. Family tombs along roads. Seasonal rituals, remembering ancestors. Greek life did not separate sharply between living and dead. Instead, it layered them, one over the other, one beneath the other, always connected. A small omen appears. A crow lands briefly on a stone wall and tilts its head toward the rising sun. It remains for only a moment, then flies away toward distant hills. In many traditions, such birds were associated with messages between worlds. Yet here, it may be nothing more than a bird. The Greeks often allowed both interpretations to coexist, meaning and coincidence, the divine and the ordinary. You reach a quiet overlook where the land opens wide before you. Mountains stretch into the distance. The sea glimmers faintly beyond them. It is easy to forget, standing here in sunlight, that beneath this beauty lies another realm entirely. But Greek imagination never forgot. Even philosophers who questioned myth still used its language. Even skeptics still spoke of death as a journey. Hades persisted, not only as god, but as concept, as necessity, as boundary. You think back through everything you have seen. Cerberus guarding the gate, Charon crossing silent waters, the judges weighing lives, the rivers shaping memory and forgetting, the punished souls repeating their endless cycles. Sisyphus, Tantalus, Ixion, each reflecting something human, each revealing imbalance, each teaching, in its own way, that existence has structure. And now, Hades himself appears not as a tyrant, but as administrator of that structure. Ancient writers sometimes portrayed him sternly, others with surprising neutrality. A few philosophical traditions even softened his image further, emphasizing order over fear. The variability itself is significant. It shows that Hades was never fixed. He was interpreted, reinterpreted, reimagined. You begin descending gently toward a coastal path. Sea air grows stronger. The sound of waves becomes clearer. Fishing boats move slowly across the water. The sun climbs higher into the sky, and yet the underworld remains just beneath imagination's surface. The Greeks lived with that dual awareness, life above, death below, neither fully separate, neither fully distant. As you walk, another reflection emerges. Hades is often misunderstood in later cultures as purely dark or evil. But within Greek tradition, that simplification does not fully hold. He is not chaos. He is not destruction. He is containment. He is boundary. He is what ensures that life remains distinct from death. Without him, nothing would be ordered, nothing would be defined. Even Persephone's dual role reflects this complexity. She is not trapped, she is balanced. She exists between realms, a living symbol of transition itself. The sea breeze strengthens as you reach the shoreline. Waves roll steadily onto sand. Gulls circle overhead. The world feels vast and continuous, yet beneath it all, unseen. The kingdom remains, not distant, not separate, but always present. A final omen arrives quietly. A single wave pulls back farther than expected, revealing wet stone beneath before returning again. A natural motion, yet in mythic imagination, even the rhythm of tides could feel like breath. The breathing of the world, life above, death below, and between them, constant movement. You stand at the edge of land and water. Light and reflection blend across the surface of the sea. And you understand something the Greeks themselves never fully stopped exploring. Hades was never only a god of death. He was the shape of transition, the keeper of what cannot remain unchanged. And as long as change exists, his presence endures, not as fear, but as inevitability. The story is not ending. It is simply returning to stillness. The sea grows quieter as you stand at the shoreline. Waves continue their steady rhythm, rising and falling beneath a sky now fully bright with morning light. The wind carries the scent of salt and distant storms. Behind you, the land stretches into hills, villages, and mountain paths you have already traveled in spirit. And beneath all of it, unseen, the kingdom remains. The underworld is no longer something you descend toward. It is something you carry awareness of, a presence beneath existence itself. You walk slowly along the shore where sand shifts gently under your feet. Shells glint in the sunlight. Fishermen prepare their boats for the day. The ordinary world continues its endless motion. Yet every motion has a counterpart below. The Greeks never imagined Hades as a temporary ruler. His kingdom was not seasonal, not conditional, not fragile. It was eternal. That eternity is what gives it meaning. You pause near a rocky outcrop where waves strike the stone in a steady, repeating rhythm. The sound feels almost like breathing. Ancient thinkers might have interpreted it as a sign of continuity between worlds. Life above, death below, one echoing the other. Earlier in your journey, you walk through rivers of the dead. Styx, Acheron, Lethe, Phlegethon. Each river represented not only geography, but condition, oath, sorrow, forgetfulness, transformation. Those meanings have not disappeared. They remain embedded in how the Greeks understood existence. Even now, standing in sunlight, those rivers feel closer than ever. Not physically, conceptually. You look back across everything you have witnessed. The rise of the Titans, the war of the gods, the division of the universe, the lonely king beneath the earth, the queen who bridges seasons, the musician who defied death, the heroes who failed, and those who succeeded. The punished souls locked in endless cycles, each story forming part of a larger structure, a structure that does not collapse. The Greeks did not think of mythology as separate episodes. They understood it as a continuous system, a way of explaining order, balance, limits, and transformation. A gentle breeze moves across the shoreline. Clouds drift slowly above the horizon. The sun casts long reflections upon the water, and for a moment, everything feels connected. Above, below, between. The kingdom of Hades is not simply a place beneath the earth. It is a principle woven into existence. It defines what ends, what continues, what changes, and what must be remembered. You think again of Persephone, her descent and return shaping the seasons, not as punishment, but as rhythm. You think of Hades and Persephone together, not as opposites, but as balance, one governing presence, two perspectives of the same truth. You think of Cerberus at the gate, of Charon crossing the rivers, of the judges weighing lives, of souls wandering Asphodel, of heroes resting in Elysium. Each element part of a larger design, not chaotic, not random, structured. The Greeks may not have agreed on every detail of the afterlife, but they agreed on its necessity. Something must follow life. Something must hold memory. Something must contain endings. And so Hades remains, not as a figure of terror, but as the shape of what cannot be avoided. You begin walking inland once more. The path leads through fields now illuminated by full daylight. Farmers work the soil, olive trees sway gently, children laugh in the distance. Life continues without interruption. Yet beneath every step, the same truth persists. The earth is layered, world upon world, reality upon reality, the living above, the dead below, and the boundary between them maintained by stories, rituals, and belief. A final omen appears quietly as you walk. A thin shadow passes over the sun for just a moment, as a bird crosses high above. Then light returns unchanged. The world continues as before. Perhaps it means nothing, or perhaps it is simply the reminder that even light moves through shadow. Even life passes through death. You stop at the top of a small hill overlooking everything you have seen, the sea behind you, the land before you, and beneath it all, the unseen kingdom that has accompanied your journey from the beginning. Hades does not end. He remains as memory, as structure, as inevitability. The story softens now, not into conclusion, but into quiet understanding. The underworld is not a distant place. It is the depth beneath all things, and every path in life, no matter where it begins, eventually leads toward it. The wind moves gently across the hill. The sun hangs steady in the sky, and for a long moment, everything rests in balance. The wind softens. The world becomes still. You stand at the top of the hill overlooking the land of Greece, where morning light now stretches across fields, villages, and distant mountains. The sea glimmers quietly behind you, as if holding the memory of everything that has come before, and beneath all of it, beyond sight and sound, the kingdom of Hades remains, not as a distant place, but as a final horizon, a direction every life eventually turns toward. You begin walking slowly along the hillside path. The ground is warm beneath your feet. Wild grass bends gently in the breeze. Olive trees stand scattered across the landscape like quiet witnesses. Everything feels peaceful, and yet everything carries weight. Because by now, you understand the structure beneath the stories. The Greeks did not imagine death as an interruption. They imagined it as continuation in another form, a passage into a realm where memory, judgment, and identity still mattered, where nothing was entirely lost, and nothing was entirely the same. You think back through the journey one last time. The hidden child who became king of the dead, the war that divided the cosmos, the rivers that shaped emotion itself, the ferryman who never stopped crossing, the judges who never stopped weighing lives, the fields where souls drifted between forgetting and remembrance, the punishments that reflected human imbalance, the love that crossed into the impossible and returned changed. Each story different, each story connected, together forming a single, continuous vision of existence, a world above, a world below, and the boundary between them carefully maintained. You stop beneath a cypress tree. Its dark branches move gently in the wind. The scent of resin and earth rises softly around you. In Greek tradition, such trees often marked places of remembrance, places where memory lingers. You close your eyes for a moment, and the journey returns in fragments. The blue flames of the throne hall, the sound of rivers flowing through stone, the silent gaze of Hades, the shifting presence of Persephone between worlds, the endless wheel turning in darkness, the stone that never reached its summit, the fruit that never could be eaten, the glance that changed everything. Each image remains vivid, not as fear, but as meaning. The Greeks built their mythology not only to explain what happens after death, but to understand what life requires while it continues: balance, respect, memory, limit, hope, and acceptance of what cannot be changed. A gentle breeze moves through the branches above you. Light filters through leaves in soft patterns across the ground. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings from a village temple. The sound travels across the hills, then fades. Time continues, as it always has, as it always will. And beneath time, unchanged and patient, the kingdom of Hades remains, not waiting as punishment, not waiting as fear, but waiting as structure, as certainty, as the final shared destination of all things that live. You open your eyes. The world is still here, alive, breathing, moving forward, and yet now it feels different, not larger, not smaller, simply more complete. Because you understand that every path above has its echo below. Every ending carries meaning. Every life becomes story, and every story, in time, becomes memory. The sun lowers slightly toward the horizon, casting long golden light across the land. Shadows stretch gently between trees and stones. The air cools. Everything begins to soften, as if the world itself is preparing for rest. And perhaps that is the final truth the Greeks left within these myths, that endings are not erasure, they are transitions. The river continues, the kingdom remains, the stories endure, and you, standing quietly beneath the fading light, carry all of them forward, slowly now, like a thought drifting into sleep, like a memory dissolving into night, like a journey that has reached its final, gentle pause. The underworld is no longer beneath you. It is within understanding, and understanding, once gained, does not leave. It rests quietly, forever,